the conference.
Thank you, Hamna. A very warm welcome to all those who have joined our conference on 50 years later, the future of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations. Those who are either physically present in the library of the Institute or have joined us online on Zoom. A special welcome to Ambassador Riaz Khokar, the keynote speaker, the two session chairs, Dr. Munis Ahmad and Vice Admiral Asif Humayun, and also to Dr. Ronak Jahan and Mr. Shahiduzzaman in Dhaka, and Professor Sikandar Mehdi and Ambassador Rafiuzzama Siddiqui in Karachi. 16 December is a memorable date for different reasons for Pakistan and Bangladesh. It marks the breakup of Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh as an independent and sovereign state. भाई आप जरा चुप हो जाइए. Hello, आप चुप हो जाइए. In the global perspective, Pakistan is not the only country which disintegrated in the 20th century. There was Yugoslavia, regarded as a unique example of ethnic and linguistic synthesis with borders drawn on historical lines, which disintegrated violently between 1991 and 1992, mainly because of the rise of Serbian nationalism. The Republic of Yugoslavia lasted between 1945 and 1992. We also remember the dissolution of Czechoslovakia into the Czech Republic and Slovakia in 1993. It has been described as the velvet divorce because the separation was peacefully negotiated and there was no bloodshed. There was no violence. Korea was also divided into two states for whatever reasons. But above all, there was the unraveling of a superpower, a nuclear power, the Soviet Union in 1993. President Vladimir Putin has described the collapse of the Soviet Union as the biggest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century. It led to the separation of the Soviet Union's constituent units in Europe and Central Asia, and it changed the political security dimensions of those regions. We have convened this conference not to dissect the tragic events of 1971 or to relive the events which led to 16 December 1971, but to move forward and look to the future. Our purpose is not to attribute blame to anyone, but simply to pause and to reflect. As our concept note states, much water has flown under the bridges of the Indus and the Brahmaputra during the last 50 years. The global and regional landscape has changed. We have seen the end of the Cold War, the emergence of a multipolar world, and the phenomenal rise and outreach of China in the world and in our own region. The communication systems of global politics have changed as they are charged with the use and development of amazing new technologies. Pakistan and Bangladesh share a common historical identity. They can cooperate and open a dialogue on numerous issues. They are both members of SAARC and other international organizations. And they vote on the same side on many international issues. Both of them are major contributors to UN peacekeeping forces, UN peacekeeping missions in different parts of the world. As I see it, apart from the benefits of trade, they can share experience and best practices on tackling immensely challenging issues, such as climate change, extremism, and illegal migration. Bangladesh is particularly hit by climate change. As we know, both countries are home to substantial stateless populations. The people of Bangladesh and Pakistan share the same aspirations for economic progress. They uphold democratic values, and they fight for human rights and social justice. People-to-people contacts will promote understanding and reduce the distance. And exchanges in the fields of arts, culture, and sports will enrich our lives and open new vistas for the youth of both countries. Before I request Ambassador Riaz Khokar to deliver his keynote address, I want to read from the verses penned by the famous poet Nasir Turabi on 16 December 1971, when Dhaka fell. His words reflected the sentiments of countless people like me in Pakistan at that time. Nasir Turabi wrote, "वो हम सफर था, मगर उससे हम नवाई न थी। वो हम सफर था, मगर उससे हम नवाई न थी, कि धूप छाँव का आलम था।" देखिए तरकीब कितनी खूबसूरत है, कि धूप छाँव का आलम रहा, जुदाई न थी। अदावतें थी, तगाफुल था, रंजिशें थी मगर, अदावतें थी, तगाफुल था, रंजिशें थी मगर, बिछड़ने वाले में सब कुछ था, बेवफाई न थी। अदावतें थी, तगाफुल था, रंजिशें थी मगर, बिछड़ने वाले में सब कुछ था, बेवफाई न थी। कभी ये हाल कि दोनों में यकदिली थी बहुत, कभी ये हाल कि दोनों में यकदिली थी बहुत, कभी ये मरहला जैसे कि आशनाई न थी। मोहब्बतों का सफ़र इस तरह भी गुजारा था, शिकस्ता दिल थे मुसाफिर, शिकस्ता पाई न थी। It is my pleasure to call upon Ambassador Riaz Khokar to deliver the keynote address in this conference. Ambassador Riaz Khokar has been one of Pakistan's most distinguished, most erudite ambassadors. He was the Foreign Secretary of Pakistan from June 2002 to February 2005. But few Pakistani diplomats have served on as many important assignments as Ambassador Khokar has. He was Pakistan's envoy to New Delhi, Washington, DC, and Beijing before taking the top post of Foreign Service of Pakistan. He also served as advisor to Prime Ministers Benazir Bhutto, Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi, and Nawaz Sharif. And he was appointed as special envoy on interfaith dialogue by Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz. But above all, he was Pakistan's High Commissioner to Dhaka for a few years. Ambassador Riaz Khokar, the floor is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I wish to thank Dr. Masooma Hassan, President of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, for organizing this webinar on a very important subject. 16th December is observed in at least the three capitals that matter very differently. It's customary for interstate relations that we congratulate each other on the occasion of your Independence Day. In the case of Bangladesh, the Independence Day is 26th March 1971. When I say it's marked differently, sorry. In Bangladesh, 16th December is seen as a day of deliverance or a day of liberation. In Pakistan, the mood is generally somber, a reflection on the past, and usually sophisticated journalists write about the 1971 events and what led to it. Now, my subject really is to look at the future of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations. But before I get down to that subject, may I make a few remarks relating to Pakistan and Bangladesh. First of all, we have to acknowledge that the Bengali leaders had made enormous contribution to the making of Pakistan. Quaid-e-Azam, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was the father of the nation, Pakistan, he also acknowledged the contribution of the Bengali leaders. Not only to the fact that the Muslim League was formed in Dhaka in 1906, but also the fact that one of the greatest Bengali leaders, Fazlul Haq, was the person who moved the Pakistan resolution in 1940. So I would like to pay a personal tribute to the great Bengali leaders of that time. Now, as I said, in Pakistan, our scholars, our journalists, and people who are interested in the subject see these things in a various way. But the interesting part is that there are, of course, myths, there are misperceptions, there are very strong historical facts, which are undeniable. Now, if Quaid-e-Azam was alive today, and if he was interviewed today, what do you think of the events of 1971? I would also say, if he was asked this question, which were the two worst decisions in the history of Pakistan, knowing the Quaid, who was a man of great integrity and honesty and dignity, he would say that the two worst decisions taken by Pakistan government, was A, to refuse and deny the results of the 1970 elections. Number two, he would also, in my personal opinion, there might be people who disagree with me, he would deplore the action that was taken on the 25th of March, 1971. Now, I'm not going to dig into the history of what happened in 1971, what led to it, because that is really a subject for historians who are clearly, and professional people who look at these things in a historical perspective. Chu Enlai, one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century, was once asked what he thought of the French Revolution. And I'm only paraphrasing what he said. He said, it's too early to comment on it. So I think that factor will also apply to Pakistan-Bangladesh relationship pre-71 and post-71. I think it's too early to make that judgment. Scores of books have been written in Pakistan, and I'm sure there are many outstanding books written by my Bangladeshi brothers and sisters. And of course, there are international observers who've written books on this thing. But I think one thing I do want to mention is that I think it was Confucius who said that you have to look at the past to divine the future. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm no diviner of the future. I don't wish to claim that, but I certainly have some views in regard to Pakistan-Bangladesh relationship. First of all, very often I am asked, which was your best assignment in your diplomatic career? And I put my hand on my heart to say that my best assignment was my posting to Bangladesh from 1986 to 89. It was a fascinating assignment. I had the most wonderful experience, a lot of respect and affection from my Bangladeshi friends and brothers and sisters. And I think during my period, I made a modest contribution, although I was ambassador or high commissioner in Bangladesh at a time when there was a military regime in Bangladesh. But however, I had the privilege of knowing almost all Bangladeshi leaders across the board, plus intellectuals, plus people in the media, and of course, the civil society, for which I have the greatest respect. Now, one period which I would like to recall is the time after the independence of Bangladesh. That is when the great Bangladeshi leader, the Honorable Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Sahib was the leader, and how things were settled during that time. First of all, he was gracious enough to visit Pakistan for the OIC summit in February 1974. Secondly, a very important agreement, a tripart agreement was signed between Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh in New Delhi on the 9th of April, 1974. That agreement is absolutely pivotal to Pakistan-Bangladesh relations. And I don't think we had the time that I could read some of those paragraphs, but I can mention them. Paragraph 13, paragraph 14, and paragraph 15 are absolutely critical to Pakistan-Bangladesh relations. So please, I appeal to my audience to have a look at it. Now, immediately after that agreement, the Honorable Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Sahib invited Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to visit Bangladesh, and he went there in July 1974. From records and from witnesses, I understand that he was given a tumultuous reception by the people of Bangladesh. And quite honestly, the two leaders got along famously. they had very serious discussions. But I just wanted to underline that the agreement signed in Delhi, the tripart agreement, was the fundamental, shall we say, foundational document relating to Pakistan-Bangladesh relations. And thereafter, of course, Pakistan recognized Bangladesh. Now, what are the impediments in our relationship? Having served in Bangladesh, I can tell you that it was really fabulous. And very often we did discuss these matters, but they were not in the spirit of anger or acrimony or hatred, or shall we say, we would try to look at it objectively. But obviously, there are very serious differences of opinion of what happened in 1971. Now, my experience of dealing with the Bangladesh government at that time was that, quite honestly, and I can put my hand on my heart to say this, that during my period, really no serious controversial issues were discussed between Pakistan and Bangladesh. I can say that. Now one can say, okay, maybe it was a military regime and there was a military regime in Pakistan. But during that period, our trade was flourishing. We provided 40 F-6 aircraft to Bangladesh. We provided tanks to Bangladesh. We had a reasonably thriving economic relationship. And sorry, I apologize. And people-to-people contacts were good. There were communications between the two countries, and there was sort of an upbeat mood between the two countries. Now, for me, it's hard to say this as a diplomat, as a former diplomat, that I'm not trying to blame any particular political party in Bangladesh. But the fact is that every time the Awami League is in power, we do have to face some very controversial issues. And to speak honestly, Bangladesh governments under the Awami League have raised very serious and controversial issues with Pakistan. I have I can, if you want, I can list them, but I would not go into too many details for obvious reasons. The first question is about an apology by Pakistan, that Pakistan must apologize for the events of 1971, about the atrocities, etc., etc. Now, let me say this very frankly. The word apology sounds very simple. It looks like a very simple word, but it's not that simple. The documents that I have referred to, the 1974 agreement, clearly expresses deep regret by Pakistani leadership, the then Pakistani leadership, of the events, of the atrocities, and of the violence that was committed during that period. The second part, which flows from the first one, is the question of reparation, war reparations, demand by Bangladesh for war reparations. The third issue is about division of assets. The fourth issue is about the repatriation of what is generally called stranded Pakistanis or Biharis. or non-Bengalis who were left behind at that time. Now, I can tell you that during my period, Benazir Bhutto visited Bangladesh. I don't know how many of my Bangladeshi friends would recall this, but this was in 1989. She took that, actually she herself asked for that visit. And at that time, President Irshad was the head of the state and the head of government. He readily accepted it. And these issues did come up, to be fair to both governments, that these issues did come up. But these are not issues that can be decided very quickly or can be worked upon in a day or two. These things take ages. Like, let me give you an example, a recent example. Last year, I think the German government apologized to Poland after 80 years. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is going to happen, or I'm not in the government, so I really don't know what the government thinks of it. Now, these are the key issues that are an impediment to progress between Pakistan and Bangladesh in its relationship. Well, for the last 11 years, I mean, you know, I may have retired, but I do keep an eye on what is happening between, you know, Pakistan's relations with important countries, and Bangladesh is clearly a very, very important country in the region. I pay a tribute also to Bangladesh for having conceived of the idea of SARC, which unfortunately for the last, shall we say, few years, is in suspension in terms of activities. And unfortunately, India has been holding back on allowing Pakistan to convene the SARC summit since 2016. Now, I say this a bit of regret that Bangladesh, who originally conceived of the idea of SARC, actually supported the suspension of the SARC summits, which were a regular feature. And I mean, as you know, in SARC, the discussions on bilateral issues are not permitted under SARC. You cannot discuss it in the summit, but it gave the leaders an opportunity to discuss matters on the sideline and see how things can move forward between countries. But I'm talking of the bilateral equations. I'm told that of late, there have been some forward movement in our relationship. When Prime Minister Hasina Wajid was elected, and Mr. Imran Khan, our Prime Minister, congratulated her and even spoke to her on the telephone, and they did come to some kind of an understanding that Pakistan-Bangladesh relations must move forward in a number of fields, and that he will be very happy if she were to visit Pakistan. Similarly, she was gracious enough to extend an invitation to Prime Minister Imran Khan to visit Bangladesh. And more recently, again, they've had an exchange of telephone conversations where it has been emphasized that people of Pakistan would be delighted to receive Prime Minister Hasina Wajid to visit Pakistan. Now, these are good things, but there are many other areas that we can talk about. So how do we get over this, shall we say, stalemate in the relationship? I can only express my personal view. And I think If we seriously want to engage, and there is really no reason why we should not engage. After all, we shared a common struggle for the independence from British India. I referred to the great contribution of the Bengali leaders at that time, which was also acknowledged by the Qaid and by many others. Whereas, if you were to compare what the situation in West Pakistan was, in West Pakistan, there were dissidents and there were different views about the creation of Pakistan. Um, I can mention that some of the religious parties had actually opposed the creation of Pakistan, which are now actually quite dominant in Pakistan. And there were others like the Unionists and so on and so forth. So I, as a serious person, as a senior citizen of Pakistan, I wish to acknowledge the role of the Bangladeshi leaders at that time for their contribution to Pakistan. Now, how do we move forward? I think Dr. Masuma Hassan had listed a few things. First of all, there's very little contact between the two countries. It is so sad. I would say the think tanks in Bangladesh and think tanks in Pakistan should cooperate. I would say that the civil society in Bangladesh, which I know is extremely active, should cooperate with the Pakistani civil society. The media should cooperate with each other and see if slowly these granite-like impediments that are in the way of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations can be chipped away slowly and slowly. I would also say that the institutional contacts that were worked out between the two countries over the years must be revived. Like, for instance, we had the institution of the Joint Economic Commission, which, believe it or not, had not met since 2007. Similarly, we have an institution of talks at the foreign secretary's level with Bangladesh. These talks have not taken place since 2009 or 2010. In fact, there is really a virtual cut down in contacts between the two countries. Now, this is very, very sad. And I think we have very good reasons to cooperate. Now, I refer also to cultural exchanges. Bangladesh culture is extremely rich in every area, whether it's poetry, it's music, dance, art. And similarly, Pakistan has a very varied culture. I think there is no reason why the two countries should not cooperate with each other in the field of cultural exchanges. I would also say Pakistan would be very happy to have an exchange program of students. This is necessary. It's shameful that we are not receiving Bangladeshi students here. Although there are some scholarships, they're very modest. There are 6 or 7 of them. But I would say Pakistan should offer hundreds of scholarships if possible in various fields. And similarly, I expect that Bangladesh would make a reciprocal offer to the Pakistani students. So I would say that, and now let me say one more thing as a tribute to Bangladesh. Today, Dr. Ishrat Hussain, who was a former governor of the State Bank and until recently was the minister of Imran Khan's government, has written a glorious article on the progress and the development that Bangladesh has made in the last 50 years. I really, and I have been following this thing, a great tribute to the people of Bangladesh. who have proven that they are very hardworking and that they are self-sustaining. And in fact, today, if I'm not mistaken, not only the World Bank, the UNDP, independent research organizations, independent think tanks have been citing Bangladesh as a model of development for others to follow. I have personal experience. I've seen some remarkable NGOs in Bangladesh. BRAC, for instance, outstanding. I think it's an amazing, and I think the late Mr. Abid, who was the brain behind BRAC, made a great contribution, and I think we should emulate. And then you have Dr. Yunus of Grameen Bank, and it is amazing. My own personal assessment, that I saw during my period is the way Bangladesh has empowered their women. It's amazing. It's really it's an example for not only South Asians but perhaps the rest of the world, to see how Bangladesh systematically and consistently empowered the women of Bangladesh. This is remarkable. I think the garment industry alone has brought about enormous changes in the economy of Bangladesh. So I think if one were to add one final comment on the economy is that all these social indicators of Bangladesh are very impressive, far better than India, far better than Pakistan, and perhaps somewhat equal to Sri Lanka in many areas. But in many areas, Bangladesh is leading. So I think now, in fact, the economic situation in Bangladesh is very impressive. Your trade figures are fantastic. I mean, it's like 40 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And your reserves are also in that region, about 40 billion. I'm sorry to say that Pakistan's economy is in shambles. And we are trying very hard, but we are going through an extremely difficult period. But surely our government and our leaders are. So I can only conclude on my remarks by saying that while these very serious impediments are there, there is no reason why we should not be having contact with each other. There's no reason why we should not be talking. I think there is absolutely an absence of debate between Pakistan and Bangladesh, not only at the public level, at the private level, among our elites, I suppose, and certainly not with the government. So while I would like to conclude, I hope, Masuma, I have not exceeded my time. While I would like to conclude on a hope and a wish and a desire that Pakistan-Bangladesh relations do have a future. And I do hope that the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Hasina Wajid, would consider visiting Pakistan. And I'm sure that Imran Khan would love to visit Bangladesh, where he's already very well known. I'm so delighted that the Pakistan-Bangladesh cricket team, played their recent matches in Dhaka and brought about a lot of joy to the people of Bangladesh and also a lot of joy to the people of Pakistan. Last of all, I would say that, yes, Bangladesh has a right to have any kind of relationship, any of its neighbors. It's not for Pakistan to say anything in that context. But clearly, my wish is that Pakistan-Bangladesh relations should be independent of what's happening in our neighborhood. Lots of negative things are happening in the neighborhood. Fundamentalism is on the rise. Extremism is on the rise. These are all very dangerous trends. And, while this may be an internal matter of India, they talk about, the Citizenship Act and the Register Act, where they very shamefully mentioned that, those who are settled in West Bengal are termites and they should be removed or terminated or something to that effect. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I appeal to my Bangladeshi friends that let's resume communication. It's such a pity that there are no direct flights between the two countries today. There are virtually no contacts between the two countries. I suppose our telephone links are there, but that's not good enough. I think there should be, you shall say, widespread contact between the two countries. We have much to share, much to learn from each other. I think I would like to send our economic team to Bangladesh just to find out how Bangladesh has succeeded in turning around its economic development for a great future for the people of Bangladesh. Finally, I'd like to wish the people of Bangladesh, great prosperity, development, and surely Bangladesh has made a niche for itself in the international community. Bangladesh is highly respected, and I think Pakistan and Bangladesh, who share so many interesting issues when the international community is concerned, and we cooperate. At the United Nations, we cooperate excellently. And there are issues like the climate change mentioned by Masuma, and there are other issues on which we can cooperate. So I would like to conclude by thanking Masuma for having given me this opportunity. And I would like to thank all the panelists and all those who are actually listening into this conversation. Thank you very much, Masuma.
Thank you, Riaz. That was a sweeping historical as well as analytical presentation, and I'm very grateful to you. You did not exceed your time. You were well within your time. Thank you very much. And as you said, let us resume communication.
Dr.
I would like
Masuma
to
Hassan.
now request Dr. Munis Ahmed to come up on stage to chair the first session, A Time to Reflect.
Dr. Masuma Hassan, organizers, I know my session is later in the afternoon, but can I give a very quick response, quick feedback to Ambassador Khokar, please?
Yes,
Can I
surely.
just take 2 minutes?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will later elaborate on during my session about some of these issues that I just briefly want to touch upon. First of all, I think, yes, we do want to have better relations with and continuing to have people-to-people contact with Pakistan. But I think couple of fundamental things I think one should take into cognizance. First is Bangladesh's foreign policy is dictated by what our founding father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, said, that it is friendship to all and malice towards none. And so Bangladesh really wants to have good relations with all the South Asian countries and all the countries. And economic prosperity, economic progress is what is driving Bangladesh's policies, not only in the internal policies, but also our external policies. So, but it is not the strategy. Bangladesh does not want to be embroiled in any strategic or conflicts that countries may have within South Asia or even globally. So Bangladesh would like to have good relations with both Pakistan and India, but don't want to be embroiled or make that or be obsessed by that particular conflict, which I think is a problem really in terms of moving SARC idea forward. Bangladesh also doesn't want to be caught up in the geopolitical conflict between USA and China. What Bangladesh wants is economic progress, social progress for our own people, and have trade relations and other opportunities for economic development, but not be make geopolitical or arms race and these kinds of issues any priority. So that is, I think, one has to understand. If at a later stage I am going to talk about our social and economic.
Thank you so much, Rona. Thank you very much.
Just one more
Thank
thing.
you. You've made your point.
No,
Thank you very much.
But the final point is there is really some of the issues that Ambassador Khokar said is impediment is not just the issues upheld by the Awami League. There is a widespread mass support and constituency support behind those.
Thank you very much, Rona.
I'm not saying that should be an obstacle. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ronak. Our first session is about to begin, a time to reflect. I would like to request Dr. Munis Ahmed to come up on stage to share this session.
Okay, I think we need to proceed. We're right on time, 12:30. So the theme of this session is, this is session 1 of this conference, a time to reflect. And we have two speakers, Professor Syed Sikandar Mehdi, who is a former professor and chairperson of Department of International Relations, University of Karachi, and the theme which he will basically cover is remembering Bangladesh in Pakistan. So I would request Professor Sikandar Mehdi to kindly take his seat. The second speaker is also quite known person, Professor M. Shahiduzama from Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka. And his topic is removing stereotypes for future of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations. So I would request Professor Syed Sikandar Mehdi, because I think he's the most suitable person. He's perhaps the only person who was there in East Pakistan, then Bangladesh, on December 16th, 1971, and came to Karachi in 1974, 73, 74. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Munis.
My presentation is on the memories of Bangladesh in Pakistan. And the focus of the seminar is on building good relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh. I will start by saying that an impact run away. We cannot wish away the past. So this is a problem because in our classrooms, in the schools, colleges, and universities, Bangladesh simply doesn't exist. Or if it exists in the background of India-Pakistan war. The children, the new generations of Pakistan know very little about the emotional ties between the peoples of Bangladesh and Pakistan before 1971 and after 1971. Memory is the problem. We have no memory of Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has the memory of its own. It's the foundation of the statehood of Bangladesh is away from here. It's very important that the memories of Pakistan and Bangladesh are studied, researched, and see if the memories are changing or not. Is it still hard? Are the memories unrecorded, unpublished, personal memories? And then there are the recorded memories and published memories. And then there are the banished memories we don't want to remember. And the memories kept alive by the poets, novelists, short story writers in Pakistan. And then the memories which are reshaping perspectives. This is the last category of memory, which can be called a memory of hope. So far, the personal memory is concerned, there are the memories of West Pakistanis who went to East Pakistan for business, for education, and they stayed on there. They have come back and they have very soft memories. They miss Bangladesh, but their memories haven't been recorded in Pakistan. Then there are the memories of the Bengali-speaking people who came to Pakistan, lived mainly in Karachi. They settled down here. Who migrated from India and who came to Pakistan either before the breakup of Pakistan or after 1971. These are personal memories. The oral memories are there, but in published form, we find very little. For example, if you allow me to share my own personal memories, a little over 70 years ago, I was born in Gaya, a district in Bihar, close to the famous Buddhist shrine, Buddha Gaya. We migrated to East Pakistan, and I had my education school, college, university education in Dhaka. I was an activist as during my student life in particular. And the Bengalis and the Biharis used to be on the street protesting against Vietnam War, against the dictatorship of Ayub Khan. In 1965, we were together patrolling at night to see that the blackout is being observed or not, Bengalis as well as Urdu-speaking people. Life went on like this, and I had education in Dhaka University, which gave birth to Bangladesh. All the teachers were Bengali teachers, most of them very nationalist teachers. But I had no problem in getting the first position there, and the department appointed me as a lecturer in 1970. So that shows that even in 1970s, things were still working, and I was well known as an Urdu-speaking person in the university. Then I lived in the Bengali area. Our family lived in Bengali locality in 1970, in 1971, until the fall of Dhaka, till our migration from Dhaka in late 1972. It's very interesting that I had very close relations with my Bengali teachers before the military action and after the military action. At the end of the day, our family decided that we should migrate to Pakistan. It was not a compulsion of circumstances. I was on job in Dhaka University, and everybody knew that I am not a Bengali. And my father was in job. He was a journalist and respected there. And we had no economic compulsion, no security compulsion, excepting that the mob doesn't understand who is a friend of Bangladesh and who is not. Then I talked to my teacher and told them that we are planning to leave Bangladesh and we will be going to Pakistan. Then he said, it's a new country. There are so many opportunities and you should stay on. Then I said that, look here, our parents came to Pakistan. Wherever Pakistan will be, we will go there. And then the Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka, threw a dinner in my honor, much before my leaving for Bangladesh. So we didn't live like thieves or like unwanted people. Of course, when I came down to Pakistan and saw the newspaper of the day, the first day, there was a caption saying, Bihari na khappe. Now, in Bangladesh, so these memories are important. These memories should be circulated, should be in circulation to soften, to humanize Pakistan. They need to know as to what happened. There is an episode regarding the GOC of Pakistan in East Pakistan, Khadim Hussain Raja, a very respected person in this part of, he wanted his daughter's admission in Dhaka University. I was teaching there. Should I go on with my personal? Okay. So I had joined the department. My chairperson, Dr. M.A. Aziz, he called me. And I saw two persons in uniform in his office. And he said, please take them to your room and see what is the matter. And tell them not to come in uniform. It was martial law time, difficult time for the Bengalis. Now, I wanted to protect my teacher, and I knew that he is a very strict person. And I took them, told them that please come in plain dress to the university. Khadim Hussein's Raja's daughter wanted admission in master's class. We had already finished admission or about to finish. And the master's, the daughter had 1 social science and the requirement for admission was 2 social science. And my teacher said that we can't give admission. And allow me to say that was Dhaka University. That was Dhaka University, which we lost. I was worried for my teacher. I knew what will happen. And then I talked to his close friends, Professor Razak and Dr. Muzaffar Ahmad Chaudhry, nationalists. They contributed to the struggle, and my chairperson was very friendly to him. So I talked to them that, look here, I want to save the life of my chairperson. And then they maneuvered things, and the condition of 2 social sciences was removed through the university bodies, 1 social science. And then we advertised that others can also apply. And then we had admission test and the interview, and the girl had taken admission. Of course, she couldn't continue because things worsened. But even at that stage, people had a sense of honor, and they were principled people. The teachers were principled people, and the teachers of the university were involved in the happenings of the country. They were not far removed. But okay, I teach in the class and that's it. So these are the memories. The recorded memories, as you know, in Pakistan has mainly been done by the military officers. They have written their own version, and this version is also important. But I don't find a great many writing by the historians, by the social scientists of Pakistan on Bangladesh issue. So that shows the reality of Pakistan and the problem that the scholars face in Pakistan. The banished memories are there. We don't talk about it. And Professor K.K. Aziz, one of the most distinguished historians of Pakistan, who wrote The Murder of History in Pakistan, he says, a country which does not look at its past in planning its future may not have any future to plan. It's true of Bangladesh-Pakistan relations also. We cannot move away from the past. And the memories like the surrender of Pakistan on 16th December, handing over of the pistol, and the murder of the intellectuals, Bengali intellectuals, the cream, they were murdered, they were abducted from homes and murdered on the night, on 14th December night. By that time, decision had already been taken that Pakistan will surrender. But dozens of great intellectuals, humanists, they were murdered and Bangladesh was made poor. I think that this memory needs to be talked about, circulated in Pakistan. I think that perhaps the civil society organizations should form a joint investigation and find out as to why these intellectuals were killed just a day or two before the official surrender. In Pakistan, stories have been written by a number of writers. Intezar Hussain has written an immortal story, Shahr Afsos. There were others, Ibrahim Jalis, Amara, Masood Sajad Manzar, and others who have written. Novels have also been written. The first novel was written, Chalta Musafir, by Altaf Fatima. Others have also written, and poets have written poems. Dr. Masuma Hassan just recited the ghazal written by Nasir Turabi. It's perhaps one of the best and truest piece of poetry on Bangladesh events. But the person whom we whom we do not give as much respect as he deserves for his bravery, for his revolutionary poetry, and for his commitment and honesty. And I find him alone in the crowd, and he is Habib Jalib. During the Bangladesh Times tragedy, Jalib wrote Bagiya Lahu Lahan, and he says, Hariyali ko aankhein tarse, Bagiya Lahu Lahan, प्यार के गीत सुनाऊं किसको, शहर हुए वीरान. He says, छलनी है कलियों के सीने, खून में लथपथ पात, और न जाने कब तक होगी अश्कों की बरसात. दुनिया वालों कब बीतेंगे दुख के ये दिन रात, खून से होली खेल रहे हैं धरती के बलवान. Bagiya Lahu Lahan. Faiz wrote, and his poem is famous. He wrote while returning from Dhaka, and the Bangladeshi intellectuals gave him very cold reception because he did not rise to the occasion, and he did not protest against military action as a person of his stature was supposed to. So he wrote, but nothing like Jalib, who said, मोहब्बत गोलियों से बो रहे हो, जमी का चेहरा खून से धो रहे हो, गुमा तुमको के रास्ता कट रहा है, यकीन मुझको के मंजिल खो रहे हो. It was much before the fall of Dhaka. But there is so much to cover. Of course, the Pakistani intellectuals, especially the West Pakistani intellectuals, the civil society, and the peoples and the political parties of Pakistan betrayed East Pakistan. I think that they should also apologize to Bangladesh, the professors, the students, the lawyers, the political parties, the poets. All of them need to apologize individually and collectively. Of course, some of them have done it. And when I go to Bangladesh, in the seminars and other places, I apologize as a citizen of Pakistan there. But if we go into the memories, we find that there were people who did not accept the military action in 1971. Dr. Firoz Ahmed, he was a student. He was the founder of Pakistan Forum, a journal. And he protested, and he was beaten up by the rival group of Pakistani students. And he was a student at that time. And then Pakistan Forum published a special issue on the genocide in East Pakistan. Dr. Akbar Zaiti, he wrote an article in the Daily Dawn a few years ago, And he says that India came at the end of the conflict, but the crisis was created by Pakistan and by its misgovernance. Then we find that new generation, younger people are now exploring, looking into the memories. And I was very happy to read about the ideas of Anam Zakaria. She's from Lahore, and she's an intellectual. She's a oral historian and very excellent oral historian. And she says that the close relationship between Pakistan and Bangladesh rests on remembrance. Pakistan needs to own its past. Without owning the past, it's not possible. She says nations cannot simply erase their history and move on. Our past will continue to haunt our present unless we engage deeply and learn from it. So you see, what is needed is not simply a call for better relationship, but we should look into the positive developments taking place in the memories of Pakistan. The younger generation, despite the smoke screen, is not willing to accept what is being told to them about what happened in East Pakistan. Perhaps Monis must be remembering, twice we had the visit of Dhaka University students to Karachi. And they came, and it was very good, and they had good impression about Pakistan. I will request my friend Shahid to see that the students of Dhaka University come to Pakistan again, and there should be an exchange of students from Pakistan to Bangladesh, and they will find out what kind of people they are. So the building of good relationship is a huge task. We cannot wish away the past, but of course we can go to explore the past, which was there, which was so painful. We need to own it, and then we move on. And for this, we need to write more. We need to talk more about Pakistan and Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mehdi Saab, idhar for sharing your memories, personal memories, and also revealing, spelling out the fact that the memories were pleasant memories and also unpleasant memories. And Khadim Hussain Raja, certainly, his book, Stranger in My Own Country, Major General Khadim Hussain Raja, he was the GOC, Dhaka. And he was among the very few who were opposed to the military action. The postponement of the National Assembly session in Dhaka, which was scheduled on March 3rd, 1971. So we can basically have a discourse in the Q&A session of what Professor Mehdi he talked about, memories and also remembering Bangladesh and Pakistan. Our next speaker is Professor Shahiduzama. And he will basically cover another important topic, which is removing stereotypes for future of Bangladesh-Pakistan relations, that future matters. We cannot be hostage to past. We can learn lessons from past or a victim of past, because if our past is, the hangover of past remains, then our present and our future would remain vulnerable to the hatred and, paranoia, things like that. So I would request Professor Shahiduzama to kindly with his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Munis Ahmad. It's been a really pleasure and honor to be here at this prestigious institute to make my own presentation. I would like to, within this limited time, just deal with some of my thoughts that had emerged over the years and that I have learned to project as my own original views. Basically, I am a student of foreign policy and geopolitics, and I happen to feel more attracted towards geostrategic aspects and realities. But before I continue further, let me pay my tribute to my direct teacher in 1970, Professor Sikandar Mehdi, sir, who I had very often visited when he was here, both before our independence and after our independence. I still remember it is just before my eyes, even today, sometime around end of August 1971, when the military actions were going on. I was living in Dhaka like many, and my senior, 1 year senior, Professor Mr. Shamim and I went over to Mehdi sir's office. Shamim was trying to act very smart and said to him that, sir, everything seems to be under control. I still remember Mehdi sir's face. He was so sad. He was so shocked at such a statement. And he just told Shamim, it rings in my ears. He said, Shamim, don't try to fool me. Don't try to say such things. You know and I know what's happening in this country. I still remember, sir. We were very sad when he left Bangladesh. We still always treated him as one of our own. Many years later, when I took my students to Karachi University, he was there. And he was so passionately involved, taking care of my students and us. Even until we left to the airport, he came running and asking us if we had any problem or anything to do. Here is a human being whose soul lies with us. Similarly, my tribute to Professor Raunak Jahan, who I used to see at the BIISS mid-80s. I participated and so did she. There were times when she would encourage me to go up and speak. She even said, let Shahiduzzaman say what. So I haven't met her for so many years, but I still remember her perceptions of international relations. Now, I want to address the question of stereotypes. Stereotypes have very often, distorted the image of the Bengali among Pakistanis, because it was Field Marshal Ayub Khan who, in his book Friends Not Masters, did the nasty thing that he should have never done. He even wrote sentences trying to suggest that the Bengalis were non-martial. And he tried to suggest that we were, always at the other end of the spectrum in terms of racial perceptions. I need not continue. Many of you must have read his book, but let me suggest to you, you may check it up, you may agree or disagree. In my years of exposure to the Muslim Bengali identity, as we are the Bangladeshis, I had encountered such stereotypes that I wish to clarify. Bengali Muslims had been a martial race for almost 1,000 years. This is something that is not known in Pakistan. The Sultanate of Bengal, that thrived as an independent Muslim empire for 9 centuries, was mostly manned by Bengali men who ceaselessly laid down their lives. The Mughal armies had huge Bengali Muslim presence. When Bahadur Shah Zafar was imprisoned, and we had our first war of independence in 1857, it was the Bengali light cavalry which marched from Barakpur near Calcutta to Delhi and restored him to the Mughal throne. The Sultanate of Bengal had preceded the Mughals, and Bengali Muslims were of mixed racial and ethnic ancestry and were the largest targets of British colonial legacy after 1857. The British Commonwealth Library bears records of thousands of Bengalis who were mercilessly hanged or blown away with their bodies torn into pieces by cannons. It was after 1857, the so-called Sepoy Mutiny, that Bengalis were deliberately castigated as non-martial. Yet thousands of Bengalis fought for the Ottoman Turks and laid down their lives. Nawab Salimullah, who initiated the All India Muslim League in 1905, was the uncrowned leader of the Bengali Muslims at the beginning of the 20th century. He wanted to set up the Dhaka University. He even tried to protect the boundaries of the partitioned Bengal, and he wanted to have our links with Assam so that the Bengalis could spread across. He opposed the annulment of the partition of 1911, which, if it was not annulled, would have made the Bengali Muslims spread all across what is known today as the Indian Northeast. He brought the Muslim leaders to a common platform in Dhaka and raised a demand for a university, not only for education, but also for creating the political consciousness and to create our clear distance and safety from the stiff opposition of the Calcutta Hindu elite. Very few have known the fact that Nawab Salimullah was brutally murdered by the Hindu fanatics in connivance with the colonial masters in 1915 when he had visited Calcutta to talk about setting up the university in Dhaka. His death was the greatest tragedy in those early years of Muslim Bengal Renaissance. After Nawab Salimullah, it has been, as you all know, the Sher-e Bangla Fazlul Haq and Hossein Shahid Sarwardi, who were masterminds in the politics of the subcontinent, but has not been known so much in Pakistan. Both of them were the mayors of Calcutta. Both of them became the prime ministers of United Bengal. And both had contributed greatly to create the boundaries of Bengal in such a manner that we wouldn't be thrust into such a small land forcibly that it would almost look like a slum. When we tried to create a united Bengal and Assam, and Sarwardi masterminded, even Muhammad Ali Jinnah supported the effort. Mountbatten found the idea a great idea. And he thought that he would be able to create a prosperous Bengal, Assam, independent secular state, mostly dominated by the Muslims of Bengal, who had a tradition of martial activity. But unfortunately, when the plebiscite took place in the Bengal parliament, Nehru and Gandhi signaled to the Congress Bengali Hindus not to support it. And the whole effort was lost, and Sarwardi was diverted away from the Ratcliffe Commission boundary preparation, about which Hamidul Haq Chaudhry has remarked that if Sarwardi was there in the Bengal Ratcliffe Commission negotiations, then we would not have lost Assam. The absence of Hossein Shahid Sarwardi made us poorer. When the boundaries of Bengal were to include the Northeast and Tripura, we found that people fell through. There were delegations that came, even the Maharaja of Tripura came to Dhaka. Sher-e Bangla Fazlul Haq tried to persuade Muhammad Ali Jinnah, but to him it was too late. There was General Long Sang, who also tried to reassure the Jinnah that if Arakan stayed with Burma, the Rohingyas would be safe. And despite that, Sher-e Bangla tried to persuade Jinnah that Arakan, the people of Arakan should be included in East Pakistan. But by that time, Jinnah had made up his mind, and he seemed certain about General Aung San's promise that the Rohingyas will enjoy full citizenship as equals. Over the years, I personally believe that if in the 1950s, parliamentary democracy had survived in 1958, if Sarwardi had continued to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he was the architect of the foreign policy of Pakistan. He had Pakistan join CENTO, CIETO. He even initiated the visit to China. When Chow En-lai came to Dhaka, I have seen a picture where he was sitting. There was Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman too, wearing a suit and a bow tie, sitting next to Chow En-lai in the mid-1950s. That was the time when Sarwardi was the architect of Pakistan's future security structure, but it was not to be. But Ayub Khan took over and declared martial law. Unfortunately, I have to say, and most Bengalis believe, educated Bengalis believe, that it was President Ayub Khan who really destroyed the future of Pakistan, united Pakistan, by declaring martial law. Had martial law not been declared, Pakistan probably would have had a chance. Bengali leaders like Shere Bangla and Sarwardi would have had a great role to play in Pakistan's unity. Perhaps the feudal structure in Punjab would have broken up. Perhaps the military in Pakistan would have been given a more human character. But then I have heard Pakistani scholars, even last night on a private television channel, a Pakistani scholar was pointing out how it happened that the future of Pakistan that could have clearly gone in the parliamentary democratic way was sabotaged in 1958. What happened in 1960s was a tragedy. Even a Pakistani military man was so popular as the governor of East Pakistan. I'm talking of General Azam Khan. And it was because of his popularity that he was removed by Ayub. And a henchman, Abdul Momen Khan, was installed as the governor of East Pakistan, who was a laughing stock to most educated Bengalis, who President Ayub thought fit to be the governor. In the 1960s, unfortunately, we went through those phases which distanced Bengalis from Pakistan, from the West Pakistani elite. And had Ayub Khan really been court-martialed in 1958, had democracy been saved, perhaps we would have had a better future. I don't know if the separation would have been inevitable, but that separation perhaps, even if it was inevitable, would not have been so painful. As we look at this day, I want to point out to you that Muslims in East Bengal have never succumbed to the pressures of India. We won our independence on our own. It was our Mukti Bahini, about which the Indian army admits that they were the eyes and ears of that war of liberation. Our officers, our Bengali officers fought bravely. Ziaur Rahman, who fought in the 1965 war, contributed along with the Bengal regiment to the saving and survival of the Lahore front. In Bangladesh, when the Indian army really came in, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu, made sure that they left the soil of Bangladesh as soon as possible. That was the greatness of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Most Pakistanis do not realize this, that although this was a day of defeat for them for their own reasons, but the fact does remain that Bengalis, the Muslims of Bengal, did not allow the Indian army to stay here a single minute beyond what it was required to withdraw as fast as possible. As soon as Bangabandhu landed in Delhi, the first thing I've heard it right from the horse's mouth, the Indian Defense Secretary said to a scholar, Bengali scholar, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman turned to Mrs. Gandhi and asked her, "Elder sister, when will your Indian troops leave Bangladesh?" And then Indira Gandhi replied, "As soon as you say." And they did leave. They left by March. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman wanted to see Bangladesh, and he saw it as a truly independent country. He also made sure that although we signed the Indo-Bangladesh Friendship Treaty of 25 years, it was clearly inserted in that treaty that both will be sovereign republics. We will both be equal. And that is how Bangladesh was saved from any possibility of perpetuation of Indian hegemony. Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman had the courage to fly to Pakistan to attend the OIC. He never bothered about any Indian acknowledgement of his decision to visit. In fact, one of our very senior bureaucrats, Asafud-Dawla, who was at that time a joint secretary, attended a Indo-Bangladeshi summit where Mrs. Gandhi and Swaran Singh was sitting opposite to Bangabandhu. When Swaran Singh asked Bangabandhu that, Mr. Prime Minister, we are very pained that you have gone to Pakistan and you had not informed us. According to Mr. Mashiud-Dawla, who was sitting in the corner as a joint secretary, Bangabandhu firmly banged on the table and said, Mr. Swaran Singh, don't try to teach me the history of South Asia and don't try to teach me what I should do. I know enough to decide what is right for Bangladesh. This was Bangladesh's spirit of independence. This is something that Pakistanis must recognize and realize, that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was really a man of principle, a man of guts. He was an honorable man. And it was not that just he won the votes of the Bengalis in a whim. He had won the votes of the Bengalis because he had believed in the salvation of Bengali nation. That is why his daughter today makes sure that we establish a balanced relationship with India. Right now, as I speak, the Indian president is touring Bangladesh. He has attended the Victory Day parade, sitting there with the Bangladeshi president. And he had seen columns of Bangladeshi forces march, an all-out prepared army that will defend its boundaries. We have made it very clear to our South Asian neighbors that we wish to live peacefully, but we shall defend every bit of our sovereignty. Yes, there are aspects in our relationship with India that very often perplex Pakistan. They seem to think that our relationship with India may continue to be guided by a sense of dependence. There are geopolitical realities. Of course, we recognize the fact that we need a very cordial relationship with India, but that cordiality is not always forthcoming. We have seen that we have serious problems on the question of water sharing, on the question of releasing the waters of Tista, on the problems that we face in India that has been referred to by Ambassador Coker, the problems of fundamentalism and the spillover of fundamentalist ideas into neighboring West Bengal and Assam that threaten us. Bangladesh is fully aware of the reality of India. We have tried our best to save SAARC. Prime Minister Hasina has done her best to dissuade the Indian leadership from undermining, even doing away with the idea of SAARC. We have continued to remain loyal to the SAARC idea, and we shall do so. As we have seen in the past, there have been serious problems on the question of insurgency in the neighborhood. We look forward to a relationship with Pakistan where there will be a great deal of trust built up over time, where there will be a reality where Pakistan will recognize the martial character of the Bengali nation, where there will be a reality that Pakistan will recognize that in 1947, when we lost the idea of a united Bengal and we were put together despite the geographical peculiarities, Bengalis should have been treated as a martial race. It was a great mistake because our forefathers have always taken pride on the martial identity. Our skin color may be dark and we may be lean and thin and many of us may be short. But if you look at the history objectively, if you go and search the Commonwealth Library in London and look at the records, they will tell you that Bengalis have had the maximum sacrifice. Even when we were part of United India, it was Bengal which had always been in the forefront. But we need to distinguish ourselves from any idea of being linked towards any sort of dependence beyond the sovereign identity. There are going to be future problems which we can see that may outpour from the strange dealings of the Modi government. There is a problem of India where the caste system has almost acquired the proportions of apartheid. Bangladesh completely discourages the problem of Muslims being treated as second-class citizens in India. Pakistan and Bangladesh must cooperate and join hands to make sure that the relics and the legacy of Muslims in India is not removed, is not rubbed away. There are efforts to remove the names of such cities like Allahabad is being replaced. Mughal Sarai is being replaced. It's been said that Bakhtiarganj in Bihar is being renamed after Nitish Kumar. We strongly resent, we must join together. I consider Bakhtiar Khilji as one of the founding fathers of the pride of the Bengali Muslim. We ought to renovate his grave somewhere in Bihar, which has been lying in a dilapidated condition. We would like Pakistan to be a party to ensure that the Muslim history of Muslims in India are kept alive, because many of us have our ancestral links to Lucknow, to Bihar, and to many other parts of India that cannot break away. One of the major problems in Bangladesh-Pakistan relations is perhaps the differences in dealing in terms of diplomacy. We would like to see in Pakistan the growth and development of a more sensible relationship with India. Whenever the question of serious negotiations arise between India and Pakistan, I believe, and many Bangladeshis here believe, that Pakistan should take a more mature posture on Kashmir. Do not link Pakistan with Kashmir with bilateral issues. That is what we tend to suggest to you. Deal on areas where you can have breakthroughs and bypass those areas which create problem. Trying to put the cart before the horse or trying to expect that India will resort to an acceptable solution on Pakistan is over expectation. We would urge upon you that for the sake of the future of SAARC, Pakistan would try and see that it has a sincere bid to open up to those great Indian cities so that Pakistanis can visit India and they can really be loyal to the history of the subcontinent. So I think I have more or less covered my time. I wish I had a few more minutes, but that would not be so. I hope that I have not hurt any sentiment.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
If I have, do pardon me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Shahid-Uzama, for your illuminating talk, and certainly, discussing in detail about the stereotypes, that how the mindset from both sides that it matters. We have now the question answer session, and for around half an hour, before we proceed with the question answer session, Ambassador Riaz Khokar, he wants to share his views in reply to Dr. Raunak Jahan's statement. So, Ambassador Riaz Khokar, if he is there. Yes, please.
Yes, it's first of all, I would like to pay a compliment to Professor Shahidul Zaman for his excellent presentation. I completely agree with him that this attitude of some of the people in Pakistan, particularly he mentioned President Ayub Khan, I think this is very demeaning on his part to have said all this. I think we understand your sentiments, and I appreciate your presentation. I think it should be well known in Pakistan. Secondly, I have no real objection to what Professor Ronak Jahan had said. She's a very outstanding, highly respected professor and an intellectual. I just want to mention that, you know, when I referred to the question of apology is not as simple as people think. And let me underline that on several occasions, starting from the 1974 agreement, if it is read carefully by all of us, you will see what it means. Dr. Kamal Hussain was the foreign minister of Bangladesh at that time. And on the instructions of Prime Minister Mujibur Rahman, he accepted the draft that was presented by, I think it was basically presented by the Indians. There is an expression of very deep regret by Pakistan's foreign minister at that time, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Aziz Ahmed. He said, Minister of State for Defense and Foreign Affairs of Government of Pakistan said that his government condemned and deeply regretted any crime that may have been committed in respect of the 1971 war. Then the minister noted that the Prime Minister of Pakistan had declared that he would visit Bangladesh in response to the invitation of the people of Bangladesh and appealed to the people of Bangladesh to forgive and forget the mistakes of the past in order to promote reconciliation. And finally, just for the record, similarly, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh had declared with regard to the atrocities and destruction committed in Bangladesh in 71 that he wanted the people to forget the past and make a fresh start, stating that the people of Bangladesh knew how to forgive. These are the words of Prime Minister Mujibur Rahman. So I just want to underline now, the word apology has other connotations, because then, let me give you the example of Iraq. When Saddam Hussein had to apologize to the Kuwaitis, there were huge cost of reparation that was imposed on Iraq. That is like, I think, had to pay $51 billion to Kuwait. Apart from that, apology is a word which has other implications, which I don't want to spell out at this stage. So I would say that the people of Bangladesh, and of course, when Musharraf visited Bangladesh, I was the foreign secretary at that time. And what he wrote also was a very deep expression of... Thank you. I just wanted to bring this to your notice. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. We have now around 22 minutes for Q&A session. I would request those who would like to participate, please be brief, precise, concise, to the point. Also introduce yourself and whom you want to ask. So I have by the way, I have a question here, a printout. I think I can go, yeah, there's a question, but there is a question which I got, this printout from Mr. Tariqul Islam. I don't know about Tariqul Islam, I mean like identity. but Tariq, I don't know. Tariqul Islam, is there anyone here? I think he's from Bangladesh. So he has basically like a question to anyone, both the panelists, that how to stop spreading reckless propaganda, lies, and deliberate misleading of younger generations about the history and heritage of the subcontinent Muslims by the Indian call centers and political parties with vested interests. Would you like to respond to his?
The future is for the younger generation. The other memory of Bangladesh and Pakistan. So if the memories are circulated, people meet, younger students, others meet, then definitely they will learn that times are changing. And the love lost between the people of Bangladesh and the people of Pakistan.
And of course, my respected Secretary Khokhar Sahab, London, when he used to be in the Foreign Office. I must congratulate these two for highlighting the problems which exist, which still exist between Pakistan and Bangladesh. And I think they are our brothers. They will remain our brothers. And I would say they are our elder brothers. Bhaiye, bade bhaiye. I mean, how do we treat them like this? I would recommend Secretary Khokhar Sahab to please set up a forum, Pakistan, Bangladesh forum. And I'm willing to support this financially. Help Khokhar Sahab. Set up a branch in Karachi, set up a branch in Islamabad. I think there is a lot of need for communication between our two countries. And as it has been said, there is a lot of future in business also. They are our brothers. We want them to progress, and I'm happy that they are doing better than Pakistan.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a comment. It was a comment. Now, let's move on to the, yes, please, gentleman over there. Unko mic de.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Syed Muaz Shah. I'm actually a director at the Ziauddin University. And this idea of university sending students, I would volunteer our university itself to be a source for that. But going straight to the question, and I think some of the sentiment, there's an old rabbi that once taught me that you don't know where you're going unless you know where you come from. And I think some of the sentiments that Professor Munis shared, even Professor Shahid, were very important. And recently, Javed Jabbar released a documentary on Mujibur Rahman and his perspective and how he didn't want the country to split. So I would like if you could comment on that. And in addition to that, something revolutionary, and perhaps some of people here may feel it's controversial, but as a young person, I was not around at that time, but after studying history and learning the political dynamics, do you think as a political healing, it would be advisable that in Pakistan, we should preach that Mujibur Rahman was the elected prime minister of this country? And I think that's one part of the political healing and other healings, human healings, that we need to address that are not being addressed in our education space. So
Thank
maybe
you.
a comment from Professor Shahid on that.
Yes, Professor Shahidul Zama, over to you to comment, to respond to what the gentleman had asked.
You are right. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu, he has always asserted the importance of very good relationship between Pakistan and Bangladesh, Bangladesh and China. He had been to Lahore overlooking Indian objections, and he had clearly warned India not to interfere in our foreign policy, independent foreign policy. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman had even said in the 7th of March in 1971 that even if there was one person from West Pakistan who spoke in favor of sense in the parliament, Awami League would listen to it. On the question of 6-point program where Bhutto and Yahya Khan created so much of doubts about his sincerity, Sheikh Mujib was very forthright. And the very fact that he had fought for in 1947 with Sarwardi for the independence, creation of Pakistan. He has always been loyal to the idea of maintaining the rights of Bengalis. That was his really perception, but he had always supported the idea that sense should prevail. It was basically, the problem was created because Zulfikar Ali Bhutto simply couldn't stop his, his ambitions to a certain extent. President Ayub made the mistake of having too much faith on Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and Bhutto paid it back to him. And finally, it was Yahya Khan who was totally misled by Bhutto. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu, was always willing. He had a huge heart, big heart. And he had already almost made his appointments in about governors, about who would be in his cabinet. Wali Khan was in Dhaka. Asghar Khan was trying to talk and sort out things. So many things could have been worked. Anyway, what is gone is gone. The future is ahead. Let's think for the better things to happen. Let's hope for the better things to happen in future.
Thank you very much. Your very positive approach. Now, anyone else would like to? Yes, lady over there. Inko mic de.
I want to speak on behalf of Karachi University.
Okay.
We always welcomed people from Dhaka University and Chittagong University because we had a strong microbiology department and they came there. And then there was a celebrate. और एक बहुत ही celebrated scientist थे, fungal geneticist. हमने उनको 1 महीने के लिए बुलाया कि वो आए और fungal genetics पे lecture दें. Then I met him several years later at Cold Spring Harbor, which is a very well-known institution of molecular biology. And Dr. Mujib came there. And I went around at Cold Spring Harbor, where I was nobody, that look, this is a very celebrated fungal geneticist, and please lecture karwa de. And that Cold Spring Harbor, headed by Watson, honored that request. So I just wanted to mention Professor Mujib because he was a celebrated geneticist.
Well, it's nice that you refer to him and it's nice that you refer to him and his contributions. Yes, in एक मिनट आपको मैंने देख लिया.
Sir, I have a little comment, a few words only. While doing my PhD in Moscow University, I had the privilege and honor of having Bengali students as my best friends. I still remember Taslimuddin Bhuyan and Zahirul Islam were my best friends. And they always spoke very high of our country and wanted to be very friendly. I think that if a word of saying sorry can bring the two countries together, then let us say sorry.
Point well taken. Thank you. Gentleman over there in the back. Piche, in the back.
Respected speakers and comprehensive panelists, I want to just to ask about Dr. Mono Saab. You are the keen and comprehensive, you are teacher of IR. But my question is concerned that it is not doubt about or ruthless truth. While the Mudiyas are accepted, that we are the behind the creation of in Bangladesh. Okay, but in the time of the division of Pakistan, about 10 million Bengalis Muslim are migrated to neighbor country, and Indira Gandhi is welcome to our country and settled down there. About 4 million Bengali Muslim are settled, and they were just working as their laymen. In the meantime, 1920, 21, 22, 21, 2021 में मोदी साहब ने जो ना एक बाकायदा कानून लाए कि वो जो 379 जो शरीयत का है उसके तहत जो ना इनको निकाला जाएगा, और वो एक्चुअली फोकस था आसाम में, आसाम के लिए था। तो आप क्या देखते हैं, क्या इंडिया की पॉलिसी तब्दील हो रही है और इसका असर, व्हाट इज द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ रेसिप्रोकल इम्पैक्ट of Bangladesh government, and they are open their eyes that this is a conspiracy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mehdi sahab, aap, but I was not, like presented a paper.
No, you know that Modi's policy cannot be condoned. He is de-citizenizing the Indian citizens, especially the Indian Muslims. That has to be condemned, and that is being condemned internationally. So, and these such policies do impact relationship in South Asian states. We have Bangladesh, we have Maldives, we have even non-Muslim majority states, and they don't appreciate this. And that is being condemned in Pakistan, and that's also being condemned in Bangladesh. That's being done.
Yes, the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, I think that is something, and it's a pity that the Modi regime, along with RSS and Shiv Sena and the other fanatic and the Hindu nationalist groups, I mean, they have such a bad name for India, which has been counterproductive. And one of the reasons that why you have a backlash in Bangladesh because of the Assam, the Bengali Muslims in Assam, that they have been targeted. So it's an issue which is between India and Bangladesh. It's an issue which is in India itself. But it's very strange that neither the Indian civil society, nor the political parties, or the parliament, or the Supreme Court of India, I don't know what has happened to them, that they have not taken any notice of the gross violation of human rights and the policy, open, hatred against the religious minorities. Okay, now.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Jafar. Sikandar Mehdi Saab said that a delegation of the students of Bangladesh had once come here, and he was recalling that episode. I may mention that in 2011, a delegation of 19 students of Bangladeshi universities had come here. And in return, Higher Education Commission sent 19 students of Pakistan's universities. And I led that delegation. We went to Dhaka and Chittagong and Jahangirnagar universities. I cannot explain to you the height of, welcome attitude of the Bangladeshi students. They fought with their teachers and their registrar in the Dhaka University that why Pakistani students have been put in the dormitory, whereas when we went to Pakistan, we were put in very good hostels. So I would say that future, as you mentioned, lies with the youth of the two countries. And if they both are allowed to mix up and have exchanges, I'm pretty sure many of the, historical baggages would be dropped and new ways would be found. Thank you.
I agree with you.
Okay. Now we have a question which has, there's a printout. I mean, it's online. There's a question from Nigat Mir to all the panelists. What do you think about exchange of students, which will go a long way to create harmonious relations between Bangladesh and Pakistan? Cultural collaboration should be encouraged. And then there's a question to Professor Shahiduzama. What about the Biharis in Bangladesh? I think Professor Shahiduzama can respond first, and then so Professor Shahiduzama, what about Biharis in Bangladesh or the stranded Pakistanis in Bangladesh?
Okay,
what do you think about
the Biharis of Bangladesh? I would urge my friends to somehow, if you visit Dhaka, to visit the area where the Biharis were mostly living. They are really integrated into our society. They marry, there is intermarriage, the new generation of Biharis, all the business that involves skilled people, they have a very good reputation as being extremely, technically very good at repairing and so many other things. Many of them have now gone into even literature. Urdu poetry, Urdu poets do exist in Dhaka now. The Bihari community in Bangladesh, yesterday, there was a very elderly Bihari was on a television man. He was saying that this is my home, but I'm so sorry that I was born Urdu speaking. That's what I have suffered so much. It was just a symbolic statement that it was his identity of being Urdu speaking that had him suffer so much in the earlier years. But now that he has found himself integrated to the society, he feels really a part of the system. They have their passports, they have been given the option to join the Bangladeshi political system. They have joined. Even there are many thousands of Biharis who serve in the youth ranks of Awami League and other political parties also. You will be amazed if you just come to Dhaka and see how they are involved in economy and how fruitfully, they contribute to the economy. In all segments of the society, they have stepped up. The new generation has no inhibitions, almost nothing, except for the fact that they like to listen more to Hindi music and they like to preserve their own culture, which they do very efficiently. When they are always together, I go to a salon, inevitably it will be someone cutting my hair, it would be a Bihari man. And they talk to each other in colloquial Bihari language, and they talk of movies, so many. I mean, what I want to indicate is that there is a positive psychology of survival. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sure.
Okay, but the camps are still there. And the second thing is that, well, I would suggest that perhaps we should start thinking of awarding dual nationality to the Biharis in Bangladesh and the Bengalis in Pakistan. It may be a distant thing, but maybe in the faraway future, the citizens of Bangladesh and the Pakistanis may enjoy dual nationality.
Thank you very much. Last question. Yes, जी बताइए. आप.
I want to make a comment, a couple of comments. It's not really so much a question. In the light of what has been said by Sikandar and Shahiduzzaman, I know that even in my own opening speech, I said that we should look to the future and that the purpose of this conference is to build bridges and to find ways in which Pakistan and Bangladesh can forge links for the future. But inevitably, so much reference has been made to the past. It was natural that this reference should be made. And I want to say that so much reference has been made to the violence perpetrated but that violence was perpetrated on both sides. I want to state that clearly, that there were forces, even in Bangladesh, which perpetrated that violence. The other thing I'd like to say is that I have the highest respect for Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. When I was cabinet secretary, I had the opportunity to listen to his speeches and the mammoth rallies which he addressed. And I wish that the people of Bangladesh had valued him more and not done away with him the way they did. I would also like to make a reference to what Mr. Shahid Zaman said about Hussain Shahid Sohrawardi, who was a very great leader. Don't consider him just a Bengali leader. He was a leader of Pakistan. And Shahid has said that he was the architect of the foreign policy. But I want to remind you that when Abdul Jamal Nasir nationalized the Suez Canal, Sohrawardi Sahib sided with Britain and with France. And there were massive protests in Pakistan against the stand he took. However, we recognize, Shahid, the thrust of your presentation, that the Bengalis are a national, are a martial race. Yes, we recognize that. But we also recognize that the Biharis, the so-called stranded Pakistanis in Bengal, still live in camps, and I do not agree that they have been integrated the way in which you have indicated it. Thank you very much.
Okay, now it's my turn. Basically, I mean, to conclude this session, both the speakers have been very forthcoming and rather scientific in their approach. Like Professor Sikandar Mehdi talked about the memories and that how memories have not been adequately addressed, and why we basically try to undermine, and why there is a thinking not to discuss all such issues and all such matters. If you go to Bangladesh, still, although the generation born of 1971 is now around 60–70% of the population of Bangladesh, even now, if you go, I mean, you will see the feelings about the past. But then certainly, the idea about the joint investigation or the history commission or truth and reconciliation commission between Bangladesh and Pakistan, composed of the historians, lawyers, respectable members of civil society, for an unbiased account of the past in 1971, so as to finish off the sad and the turbulent part of the history of United Pakistan, settled once and for all. It's up to the two countries, I mean, how much initiative they will take. And of course, there are a couple of things when you talk about the future. A nation which is future oriented, a nation which is visionary, the leadership certainly matters. The problem is basically that as far as the future is concerned, there has to be a paradigm shift in Bangladesh-Pakistan relations. Although one can say that since 1974, when Pakistan recognized Bangladesh and Bhutto visited Dhaka in June 1974, and Mujib earlier visited Lahore, but then the paradigm shift, it took place and then it stopped. And after the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman on August 15, 1975, and then the military takeover, when diplomatic relations established between Bangladesh and Pakistan way back in January 1976, and Ziaur Rahman's contribution. The thing is basically that there have been 2 steps forward and 4 steps backward, and the tunnel vision is a major impediment as far as the future is concerned. The history textbooks, but you have to understand, rather we have to understand that the very survival of Bangladesh, the very creation of Bangladesh the presence of Bangladesh is based on Pakistan. Look at the 3 days celebrated in Bangladesh, the Language Day, right? Ikushe, Language Day, February 22nd, 1952, what had happened. And then it's an International Language Day. I was there and I saw the target was Pakistan. Then you have, the Independence Day, that how independence was declared on March 26, 1971. They celebrate again against Pakistan. The Victory Day, December 16, 1971. So it is the textbooks in Bangladesh, they are there. They have to justify their presence, their existence, and this Pakistan bashing. So what do we do? The Pakistani textbooks certainly conspicuous in the manner that we don't want to mention about. We don't want to basically refer that there was a country called Pakistan, which was a unique country throughout the world, that one part over there, another part over there. And then everything blamed as far as India is concerned. I mean, that is something which is distorting facts. There was a policy, there was a state policy, and let me be very blunt. And Professor Shahiduzama, he talked about Ayub Khan's, this French thought master, and that the Bengalis were ridiculed by the president of Pakistan. I mean, it was too much. And then the state policy, when it was pretty clear, and when there was the Larkana plan of January 1971, when a conspiracy was hatched that if Mujibur Rahman, he refuses to be flexible on 6 points, we will use force and we will sort them out, at least for 100 years. That was the thinking, that was the state policy. It is true that from March 1st, or rather March 3rd till 25th, countless attacks were launched against the non-Bengalis, against the West Pakistan. That is true. And after the surrender. But then when it is the state policy and when the forces, they themselves, carry out the orders. And it has been very well documented, even by books which have been produced in Pakistan, which have been written in Pakistan, published in Pakistan. If you read Hassan Zahir's book, Separation of East Pakistan, if you read even Rauf Farman Ali's book, How Pakistan Got Divided, and then Khadim Hussain Raja's book, Stringent in My Own Country, that was the policy. It was the state policy to punish and to, sort the Bengalis once and for all. And that is how India exploited. Absolutely. So I think we have a long way to go, but I would suggest that Sheikh Hasina, who is the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and she is now forthcoming. She has now positive thinking about Pakistan, whatever the reasons may be. And she has accepted in writing that she will visit Pakistan in 2022. Now, when she will visit, it's an opportunity that the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who would have been the Prime Minister of Pakistan, but was denied, and we paid the price. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's daughter, when she will visit Pakistan, if she visits Pakistan, because there are forces, there are people who may be against in her own country, she should be invited to address a joint session of Parliament of Pakistan. The Bangladeshi Prime Minister addressing the joint session of the Parliament of Pakistan as a gesture. And if Imran Khan visits Dhaka, Bangladesh, he should do the same thing. The Parliament of Pakistan can, as far as sorry is concerned or whatever is concerned, that can be done by the Parliament of Pakistan. And the Parliament of Bangladesh also needs to acknowledge that what had happened in 1971. So that is an opportunity in 2022, whereby these two prime ministers, Sheikh Hasina and Imran Khan, when they will address the parliament, the joint session of the respective countries, it can cause a breakthrough in their relations. And finally, I would say that it's a pity that many MOUs were signed, treaties were signed. When Musharraf visited Bangladesh, Dhaka in July 2002, there was the Bangladesh-Pakistan Joint Commission. And then, of course, exchange visits and things like that. But unfortunately, trade between between Bangladesh and Pakistan, that is hardly a couple of $1 million. That's nothing. So there has to be, and the two countries are not connected as far as the air links are concerned. Bangladesh Biman used to fly to Karachi, PI used to fly to Dhaka, not anymore. And there was a time, I'm not saying that we can revert back to history, that the one-way ticket from Karachi to Dhaka or Dhaka to Karachi in 1970 was 250 rupees. Shipping links were there. So basically, we have to start from scratch and focus more as far as the younger generation is concerned, because after all, we lived for 24 years, and those who are 50 years old, 40 years old, are now 90 years old. That generation is phasing out. Those who are 30 years old are now 70 years old. Those who were 20 years old are now, so it's basically the new generation of Bangladesh and Pakistan. And unfortunately, if the stereotypes and the poisoning of minds, all such things have taken place, the state policy must change from both sides. With this, I would like to thank both the speakers and both the panelists, and also for the question answer session. I think it was a very interesting session which had taken place, and we are looking forward to have another opportunity after the lunch break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Muniz. I would request all the audience members to go downstairs for lunch. The second session will begin at 3 p.m. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're requested to be seated. We are about to begin. I would request all members of the audience to kindly switch their phones off. Thank you. Okay. To chair our second session, I would like to request Vice Admiral Retired Asif Humayun, who is also a member of the Council of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, to start our second session. Over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As you know, Kaisar Bengalis, I would say he doesn't wear shoes, he wears sandals, are too big for me to fill properly. Unfortunately, and fortunately for me, he was called away on some official duty today by Government of Sindh. So I have been given this onerous task to start the proceedings of number 2 session. And I'm at loss of words. Who is the first speaker? I don't even know that. So I invite Dr. Ronak Jahan from all the way from Bangladesh to address the audience and apprise of her feelings on this day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can hear me? I would like to first thank the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, particularly Dr. Masuma Hassan, chairperson of the Institute, for her kind invitation to me to participate in today's conference, which is titled 50 Years Later, The Future of Pakistan-Bangladesh Relations. As you know, as we celebrate today as our Victory Day, when we were finally able to liberate ourselves from Pakistan and achieve independence. Every year, as we celebrate, we remember the sacrifices made by millions of our people who lost their lives, homes, and property and suffered unimaginable violence during our War of National Liberation. We recognize their sacrifices and pay respect to their memories, and we also recognize their contributions. Dr. Masuma Hassan has very graciously given me an easy topic to talk about. She asked me to talk about our progress, particularly in social and economic sectors that we have made in the last 50 years. So I checked with her a couple of times, and I said that the title of the conference is Bangladesh-Pakistan relations. Are you sure you don't want me to talk about that? And she said that no, she wants me to specifically talk about our progress. So my talks essentially will be focused on that. But certainly I will make a few remarks about Bangladesh-Pakistan relations and how I view we can move that forward. Let me also say what I would not spend much time in speaking about. In the earlier session, there some of the speakers very movingly talked about their memories. And I know that memories are important, but this is not what Dr. Masuma Hassan has asked me to talk about, so I will not dwell on that. I will not also talk about many of the what if we did not do this, that, and revisit the history, because again, that is not the topic that has been given to me. But at the outset, let me, two issues or two questions came up in the earlier session, and let me very briefly address them. I think that when, as academics, we write or talk about history, then we certainly should recognize the roles of everybody. So in Bangladesh, many of us academics, we recognize that genocide was committed against the Bengalis, but we also recognize that there was violence that was committed against non-Bengalis. And I think that if you remember that even on his very famous March 7, 1971 speech, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman warned against any act of violence against non-Bengalis. And he said that this brings disrepute to the to a nation. And Bangabandhu all his life stood for non-communal politics, and he has always stood for communal harmony between Hindus and Muslims and between Bengalis and non-Bengalis. So I think we in Bangladesh, many of us academics recognize brought up in the earlier session about the Biharis. Again, I do not want to get into this debate that whether the Biharis opted for Pakistan or not, but they had to spend lives of misery in various camps, and many of our human rights activists in Bangladesh recognize all the sufferings that the Biharis had to suffer here. So let me now then turn to my topic that was assigned to me. And I will first briefly discuss the progress Bangladesh has made in the last 50 years. Then I will discuss a little bit what has been the drivers of change. How is it that Bangladesh, which was behind Pakistan in all the indicators of social and economic development in 1972, that now we have surpassed Pakistan. And then finally, I will briefly talk about what are our priorities as far as our foreign policy is concerned, and how Bangladesh and Pakistan can build a better relation. And I will request the chair to time me and give me a warning 5 minutes before my allotted time, because sometimes when I speak, I may lose track of my time. So let me first talk about the progress in our economic and social sectors, because many of you know that when we became independent in 1972, then at that point, many people had very dire predictions about us, that we will not survive as a nation and that we may become an international basket case. But we had made very steady progress if you look at our indicators, and particularly since 1995, we have made great strides both in human and economic development. Let me give you some statistics very quickly to see how we made progress. And then I will give the Bangladesh and Pakistan figures, because I think that sort of is, I think would be easier for people to understand. So if we look at per capita GNP figures, then in 1972, Bangladesh was behind Pakistan. We were $94. Pakistan was $153. But now in 2020, Pakistan is $1,193 and we are $1,968. And even in 1995, we were behind Pakistan, but now we have surpassed Pakistan. If we look at the whole GDP figures, then in 1972, Bangladesh's GNP was a little over $6,000. Pakistan's were already now almost $9,500, but now in $1 million. And now in 2020, Bangladesh's GDP is over nearly $325,000 million, and Pakistan's is lagging behind by it is now 263, a little over that in $1 million. So again, in 1995, we were still way behind Pakistan, but now we have surpassed. In terms of savings GDP ratio, we were in the negative in 72. It was minus 3%, but now it is 25%. Pakistan started in 72 as 12%, but now it has fallen way behind, 8%. Investment GDP ratio, if you look at that, again, Bangladesh had a very low beginning, only 4% in 72. Pakistan was 14%, but now we are 31%, and Pakistan has increased only 1%, now $15. 15. Now, if you look at, say, power generation, where we made very rapid progress since 1995, or particularly since the current government came into power. In 72, our megawatts was 4,500. Pakistan's was almost 29,000. Pakistan increased in 2020 to 47,000, but we increased from 4,500 to 84,000. So it is a huge jump, particularly in the last 10 years. If we look at exports, then in 1972, Bangladesh was only $356 million. Pakistan was way ahead. It was $675 million. But now Pakistan increased in 2020 to $25,000 million, whereas Bangladesh is now almost $40,000 million. So again, a big jump for us. If you look at, again, foreign exchange reserve, then we started with a very low rate, and now we have a reserve of over $43,000 million, whereas Pakistan was ahead of us, but now its foreign exchange reserve is only $18,000 million. Again, external debt GDP ratio, That again is Bangladesh's is much lower than Pakistan's. So what I think, one should also recognize that there has been a tremendous change in Bangladesh's structure of economy, that we made huge jumps in terms of our food production. It nearly quadrupled. Bangladesh is, I think, third, for instance, diversified also our food production. Bangladesh is third in the world in terms of vegetable production, which was not the case earlier. Then again, a big change is in our manufacturing industries. Bangladesh didn't really have any manufacturing industries, but we started late, only in the early 80s, with our export-oriented garments industry, RMG. And now we are number 2, number 3, next to China, and Vietnam, I think, is slightly ahead of us now, but we are competing with Vietnam. So again, I want to look at the success of our garment industries. We import cotton, and then at the time of independence, Pakistan had cotton, Pakistan had textile industries. We had none of this, but now we are a big success story in terms of RMG in the ready-made garments, whereas Pakistan, in spite of having cotton and textile industries, they have not been able to move ahead. We have also now other manufacturing industries. We export pharmaceuticals, we export shipping. So there are a lot of new industries coming up in Bangladesh. And if many, I think, members of the audience have lived in Pakistan before we became, lived in Bangladesh before we became independent, and you will remember that we had none of this, and our business and industries were all in non-Bengali hands. So it is a new development for us. Then I think Ambassador Khokar already mentioned earlier about our remittances, that now we have like $20 billion every year. And one of the reasons that we have such a good foreign exchange reserve is because of this remittances from our migrant workers. Our IT sector also is very fast moving. One of the goals of the current government in Bangladesh, and one of the slogans they gave when they came to power, is we want to build a digital Bangladesh. And I think that this has been moving very fast. Then I will give only a few quick figures about our human development indicators. And in human development indicators, where we started early, even from the 1980s, we were already showing great success in lowering fertility, for instance. That we are not only ahead of Pakistan, but in many areas we are ahead of even India. For instance, our life expectancy at birth, which was only 46 in 1972, and Pakistan's were at that time 53. But now, for instance, ours is 72 and Pakistan's 67. Then if we look at our literacy rate also, particularly girls' secondary education, then we find that Bangladesh had made great strides. For instance, in terms of length of mean years of schooling, and in 72, ours was 1, and now it is 6. Pakistan's was also 1.5, but it is 5.2. Similarly, in terms of literacy rate, in 72, Bangladesh was 29, and then Pakistan was 25. But now we are 74, and Pakistan improved to only 58. I think that there has been a, now everybody recognizes that in terms of gender empowerment indicator, Bangladesh is well ahead of both Pakistan and India. I don't want to give too many of these details because I think I heard this morning that there has been a big write-up in one of Pakistan's newspapers about our great strides we have made in social and economic sectors. I want to spend a bit of a time talking about the drivers of change. How did Bangladesh turn around? Not only, I mean, how did Bangladesh moved ahead? In the last 50 years, I think many of us recognize that our War of Independence had a great role to play because it was actually a people's war. People, ordinary citizens, ordinary people from all walks of life spontaneously took up arms and participated in this war. And you have to also remember that Bangladesh is, I think, one of the few countries in the world who proclaimed themselves to be the People's Republic of Bangladesh. So this emphasis on people, ordinary people, that has been something that we focused on from 1972, and we have continued on that. So thus, this every ordinary citizens or people's participation in the War of Independence, it opened new aspirations for people. And people were willing to take their own initiatives to change their fortune. And there is a lot of entrepreneurship that Bangladeshis have demonstrated, not only in economic sectors, as I mentioned, that there was no business community, no industrial community in Bangladesh, also in social sectors. I think Ambassador Khokar have earlier mentioned about BRAC and Grameen Bank. Bangladesh had a huge, big NGO sector. And I think what has been also important for Bangladesh, that we devised some new innovative and low-cost solutions to solve our problems. So that was also very important. But most important, I think, the war, which is related to our War of Liberation, is that there is a lot of focus on mobilization of people, that a lot of development activities were around mobilizing ordinary citizens, but most important, mobilizing women. Many of the successes of Bangladesh, particularly in terms of reaching services to people's doorsteps, depended on mobilization of women. Our microcredit, for example, was a great success, but it was a success because this was done through mobilized groups of village women. So independence, just the very fact that for the first time, Bengalis were masters of their own destiny. And that was what we were struggling for during the Pakistani era, that we wanted to be masters and control over our own resources. And once we got a chance, then we could show what we could do with that. Thus, I think the second reason for this is that we had a lot of changes in government, but we had policy consensus on a number of issues, and we continued that focus from 1972 onward. For instance, poverty reduction was a policy consensus, and every government, whether civilian or military, our goal was on poverty reduction. Second was that this lowering fertility rate. Again, we started with that from the beginning, from 1972 onwards. And again, because our fertility was 7%, but all successive governments, whether military or civilian, we continued our focus, and it is now 2. We are at replacement level. And we achieved that even ahead of India. And of course, Pakistan is far behind. Again, education of girls and women's empowerment. This was, again, there is a policy consensus on that. And we have kept on focusing on that from early 70s up to now. Then I think
Madam, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, then I will not elaborate on some of the other reasons. First of all, I think there was a government, NGOs, communities work together. We reach services to people's doorsteps. And I think we also had some advantages, which I consider advantages over Pakistan, that we were a very homogeneous country, and we didn't have very many big rich poor divide. Let me then conclude by making a few remarks on how I view that we can move our relationship forward. As I mentioned earlier, that what drives Bangladesh and our people today is that we want to move ahead economically, socially. And we have graduated from least developed country status, and we want to be a developed country by 2041. This is the goal that our current Prime Minister has set for the country, but everybody in the country actually wants to move ahead economically. So I think that any relationship that Pakistan wants to build with Bangladesh, they have to recognize that we give priority to our economic relations. And the opportunities of better economic relations, I think, is something that if Bangladeshis thinks that, consider that better economic relations with Pakistan is going to move us economically, then I think Bangladesh would be very favorably inclined towards that. Second, I think one has to recognize also that Pakistan and Bangladesh are geographically located in two different regions. Pakistan is closer to Middle East, but Bangladesh is closer to Southeast Asia and East Asia. For instance, and we look upon Singapore, we look upon Korea as our role models in that way. We are looking east, and we want to build relationships with our sub-regional area. For instance, northeast of India, then China. These are the places where we find economic linkages, economic linkages with these areas. We feel that will give us better opportunities for economic development. So I think this is also something that I think you need to recognize our development strategies. Third, I think, is that what we need to, I mean, again, I think in earlier session, I think there was some reference to trade relations. Bangladesh is building fast trade relations with India, and Bangladesh is really building fast economic relations with China, for instance. And I think for Pakistan, then they have to sort of again think of how economic relations with Bangladesh can be built and what are the impediments. And I would like to conclude here by making only two other points. One is that you also, Pakistan and Bangladesh, we have to also recognize what are our secular principles. This is very important principle that we are very proud of, and we would not, we are very worried about any development of any religion-based extremist groups, because I think that because we want to keep our focus on economic and social progress and not get sidelined by giving priority to arms race or geopolitical interests. I think people's economic interest is what is our focus. Finally, what I want to conclude on is that if we want to move forward, then we have to ask what is the interest of young people in Bangladesh and Pakistan? How do they view this? And I think every country would view what is the enlightened self-interest of young Bangladeshis and young Pakistanis. If young Pakistanis think that a better economic relations with Bangladesh is the way to go, then that is a place for, that is how we will move ahead. If young Bangladeshis think that building economic relations with Pakistan would serve our enlightened self-interest, then I think that is how we will be able to move our relations forward. So I think I would like to again thank the organizers. And if I have taken a few minutes beyond my allotted 20 minutes, my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ronak Jahan, for a very elaborate presentation on how Bangladesh has moved forward in its achievements and challenges. Our next speaker is Ambassador Rafiuz-Zaman Siddiqui, and I will introduce him. Ambassador Rafiuz-Zaman Siddiqui was a career diplomat who served as Pakistan's High Commissioner to Bangladesh from 2016 to 2018, that is only 3 years ago. He also served as Pakistan's High Commissioner to Kenya and Permanent Rep of Pakistan to UNEP and UN Habitat. He was Director General of Afghanistan and ECO and Additional Foreign Secretary Europe at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He is currently working as advisor, corporate affairs at United Marine Agencies. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking Dr. Masood for providing me this to share my thoughts in reminiscing the time I spent in Bangladesh, and that was twice. First in my junior capacity as counselor from 2002 to 2006, and later as High Commissioner from 2016 to 2018. On the occasion when Bangladesh celebrates its 50th Golden Jubilee anniversary. My association with Bangladesh goes back to early 50s when my grandfather, Chaudhry Khaliquzzama, was serving there as governor of East Bengal in those tumultuous political times. It is rather interesting to note that since I joined the Foreign Service in '86, Dhaka started trailing me. It was here in Karachi while I was serving as protocol officer in the camp office of our ministry. I received my marching orders for Dhaka. But as is the wont of our ministry, the posting plan kept on changing and I was asked to report for duty in our consulate in Jeddah. It was during my second posting in Madrid that Dhaka struck again. A junior colleague in our mission, in our High Commission in Dhaka, called me and tried to dissuade me from coming to Bangladesh, citing a number of reasons, including security, health, pollution, traffic jams, etc. But since I was already serving in an A category mission, I was on a weaker wicket to ask a ministry to send me to some other exotic station. And otherwise also I knew that our redoubtable Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Coker, who's probably listening to me, would not have liked it one bit. Anyway, I arrived in Bangladesh in October 2002. And I also remember that my own colleague, Ambassador Riaz Bukhari, whom I was replacing, painted a totally different picture about Dhaka. As I said, October 2002, when Khaleda Zia's BNP was ruling the country, Dhaka was a total change of scene from Madrid. As one colleague said, that it was very boisterous and very bumpy. And I could see it seemed interminable, and every kind of vehicle plying on the roads of Bangladesh, the cycle, archaic cycle and were a great disruption to smooth flow of traffic. Drive through airport to Gulshan district was really a challenging. And I remember that the chaotic traffic signals that I mentioned earlier were really hampering the traffic. But anyway, we arrived at our apartment, which was given to us to spend few days. The initial, after the teething problems, when I settled down in Dhaka in a beautiful compartment. By the way, Dhaka has most amazing buildings and compartments. We don't have any such thing like that in Pakistan. In fact, they can beat even many Western or Middle Eastern countries as well. It was rather interesting to note that during those days, when BNP's regime when BNP was running the country, our relations remained on even keel. Irritants responsible for widening the gulf between our two countries generally remained in the background and were brought up only perfunctorily. And the close camaraderie between the two foreign ministers, our foreign minister Saab and Murshid Khan from Bangladesh, added boon to our bilateral relations. Digressing slightly, I would like to quote a very interesting incident that when Suri Saab arrived in 2004 to invite Prime Minister Khaleda Zia to participate in the SAARC summit, which was being held in Islamabad. He also availed an opportunity to call on leader of the opposition at that time, Sheikh Hasina, at a very modest residence. I accompanied the minister to the meeting. During the, recalling his father's association with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the foreign minister, inter alia touched upon the bilateral issues as well. Sheikh Hasina, interestingly complained that PIA was responsible in her downfall. So the foreign minister was taken aback by her words and wondered as to how come our national carrier be involved in this kind of politics. So Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said that by PIA she meant Pakistan, India, and America. So the foreign minister was rather amused, and Pakistan, we have no business to poke in your internal affairs, and our only desire is to have constructive engagement with Dhaka. But not shying away, he also said something which probably was not approved by Sheikh Hasina. He said that whenever BNP is in government, our relations improve considerably. And on the contrary, when Awami League is in power, our relations take nosedive. Anyway, she did not agree with that. A couple of months before my arrival in Dhaka, President Musharraf had paid a visit to Bangladesh. The apogee of his visit was the remarks that he scribbled at Sabar Memorial, stating the regrets of events of 1971 events. And he repeated those same remarks at the banquet hosted in his honor by Prime Minister Khaleda Zia in the evening. President, short of apology, had created a surfeit of goodwill in Bangladesh, especially coming from a general. His words carried weight and meant a lot to them. President's visit to Bangladesh and Prime Minister Hasina's visit to Islamabad to attend the summit, SAARC summit, stated that, in taking our bilateral relations to one notch or two higher and put them on another pedestal. Otherwise, also during BNP's regime, the constant engagement on various areas of cooperation, including political, culture, defense, etc., kept on moving at a steady pace, and bilateral visits were kind of regular feature. But more importantly, foreign secretary level consultations and JEC meetings were held at regular interval. I would say that Pakistani diplomats in those days enjoyed a special place in the hearts of Bangladeshis, but in fact, they still do. I was happy to get connected to many diplomats with whom I had worked in my previous postings, which included Jeddah and Madrid. And I found them extremely helpful and cooperative in resolving many issues that confronted our High Commission from time to time. It was, very, I would say that I was really welcomed in Bangladesh, and I was always received very warmly by many senior politicians and bureaucrats and journalists who were known to my grandfather. In this regard, I would especially like to mention the names of Hamde Bogra and Faizul Haq Chaudhry, the sons of late Muhammad Ali Bogra and Maulvi Faisal Haq, who had opened the doors of their home for me, and I was welcomed by them all the time. if I don't mention the name of Ambassador Mohsen, who was the Bangladeshi's foreign secretary, and his late wife, they literally treated me like their own sons. And there's a long list of people with whom I have great, interaction, and they were very, very, the elders one literally treat me like their son. And celebrities like Runa Laila, Shabnam, and her husband Robin Ghosh, they became very good friends. And this, this friendly alliance, and other Sheen was added to this friendly alliance when I returned to Dhaka in October, in September 2016. With regard to first tenure, I think suffices to say that Dhaka was a great learning. It was not only important from the political point of view, but it was also very important for our diplomats to hone their diplomatic and social skills. Warmth and geniality, exhibited by my Bangladeshi friends, extremely productive, comfortable, and a happy one. It was on my return from Nairobi as High Commissioner when I joined the Secretary for Europe. When our Foreign Secretary is asked, Chaudhry Saab called me over and asked me to pack my bags. And I said, for where? So he said, well, I've already served in Bangladesh before. If at all you want to send me to some other. You have already served. I consider you to be the most suitable candidate to represent Pakistan and Dhaka. Citing some familial difficulties, and since my children were going to school and it would have affected their education because I was due to retire in little more than 2 years. But anyway, Foreign Secretary asked me to take up this assignment, so I agreed to it. This was, rather interesting to see that, note that just before my movement to Dhaka, our two governments had decided to hold Foreign Secretary level consultations. Since I was already nominated for Dhaka, and so Foreign Secretary deemed it appropriate to include me in the delegation. But just before we were about to leave, take a flight for Dhaka, the Bangladeshi government announced the hangings of this, this decision. Government brought the entire process to a halt. And, our interior statements by our interior minister and the resolution passed by the atmosphere. And, Jamaat Islami also didn't stay behind, and they also raised a lot of hue and cry about the hangings and of their compatriots in Bangladesh. But anyway, Dhaka on my second tenure was a different place from the previous one. The city had transformed considerably. The mushroom growth, not only in the physical terms, but also politically as well. This mushroom growth of high-rise roads, popping up of new restaurants and cafes, convention centers gave Dhaka a totally different look. Naked poverty, which was rampant when when I was in Dhaka in my previous posting, was not certainly, had not disappeared completely, but it was certainly, on decline. One could see that. Compared to my first posting under the BNP regime, the second one proved to be quite challenging. I remember that when I was moving to Dhaka, many of my colleagues in the Foreign Office who had served in the interim period when I was during my first and second posting, warned me of the challenges that they countenanced during their posting and asked me to be prepared for, a very rough and tough ride in Dhaka. Fortunately, I was spared the Dhaka's wrath and did not face any major issues. The only incongruity that I encountered was the issue of access. I was, during my entire stay as High Commissioner, I was not received by any dignitary or minister, which made my job, very difficult in handling the bilateral issues. And, but there were two exceptions, and the major ones. One was that of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and her advisor on international affairs, Gohar Rizvi. Gohar Rizvi is basically an academician and now, has been wearing the robes of politician since 2009 and is a close confidant of the Prime Minister. He always gave me a very, extended his hand, helping hand whenever there was any crisis that we would run into. And he was also, would meet me at literally at an hour's notice and never said no to any of the invitations that I, extended to him. And it was due to the courtesy of late Prime Minister's late military secretary, an extremely affable and suave gentleman who arranged my meeting with the Prime Minister. It was the first courtesy call on Prime Minister in August 2017, after 11 months of my job as High Commissioner. Usually the courtesy calls, last for about 30 to 45 minutes. But in my case, this went on for about over 70 minutes. Sheikh Hasina was extremely, positive and forthcoming. She made me feel very comfortable. And I raised all the bilateral issues that were, serving as challenge between our two countries. Especially, although normally you do not raise such issues which are considered to be trivial, but since I was not meeting anyone in the government, so I put up to her everything which was, troubling us, and especially the visa issue, and which was kind of, inhibiting the meeting of two peoples, and also the unfriendly treatment that Pakistanis receive on their arrival at Dhaka airport. The Prime Minister listened to my grievances very patiently and promised to look into them. It was, as the meeting concluded, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina presented me with her father, Sheikh Mujib's autobiography, and said to me that his father has mentioned about my grandfather in his book, and that I should read it. I suppose I did. And then she also asked me that you must take a day out and visit the President House, Bongo Bhavan, where your grandfather lived as the governor of East Bengal. Since there was hardly any economic and political and trade relations between our two countries, but mercifully, the defense relations remained on rail, and our military officers would come visit each other's country for training. And so that was a saving grace. The only door ajar left for us was that of culture. And as Ambassador Kokasab mentioned in his talk about Bangladeshi culture, it is exceedingly rich. I mean, music, dance, art, it is, you name it and they have it. And since I'm very fond of music, so, and I used to sing a lot. So I learned Bangla music. I hired a Bangla tutor who would give me lessons, and then I would sing at every party, whether they liked it or not, but but I earned lots of plaudits from them. And I could also read Bangla a bit because I'm fluent in Hindi. As I said that since after Dhaka, ministry was sending me to Delhi. So I learned Hindi, so I can read and write Hindi fluently. That helped me in Bangla because the script is more or less same. So anyway, since when not many doors were open, so we arranged lots of cultural events at our High Commission. The one being Pehla Bushak, the hundreds of Bangladeshis from different section, and dance and music, fun and frolic made that event very successful and memorable. And I must say that it was thanks to my many Bangladeshi. There was this lady, Nazdeen Firdausi, who helped me in arranging this. And then there was another Ghazal night where I held at the Pakistan House, my residence, which was again attended by many Bangladeshis and diplomats. Kept on moving. There was another professor, Nashid Kamal. She's the niece of famous singer Firdausi Rahman, Firdausi Begum. So her niece, she wears too many hats. She's a professor, she's a singer, she's a night in our High Commission. We would also arrange, old Pakistani films, showing Runa Laila and Shabnam, and they would come. And in fact, Runa Laila did something, made my birthday memorable. We had this cinema, we were showing old Pakistani movies when Runa Lela entered into the High Commission with a huge bouquet. And in fact, that was my birthday and I did not tell anyone. And then she sang for me. So I said, this is the most memorable birthday that I had ever had. So I was really grateful to her. This is how, we kept on moving and okay. I was about to speak on Bangladesh's transformation, but I think that, okay. That subject is adequately covered by, okay. So, actually, this is not the theme of my subject, but when we talk about Bangladesh, we cannot escape talking about India. The introduction of NRC and CAA by the BJP government had annoyed Bangladesh a great deal. And it was in border security forces and water issues, especially Teesta, were creating rifts between New Delhi and Dhaka. And poisonous statements by, the BJP leadership, like Amit Shah calling illegal immigrants as termites and they should be thrown out one by one, had but enough to infuriate the government and the people. Harsh Verma, who was he's the Foreign Secretary of India, before taking the assignment, he was High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Had he rushed to Dhaka to cool the tempers, but according to media reports, which I read in Bangladeshi newspapers, was that he was not really welcomed. And Prime Minister Hasina met him after a day or so. In fact, nobody also went to receive him at the airport. And the foreign minister of Bangladesh had cancelled one of his scheduled meeting in Delhi. So all this, created problems for India. But this does not really mean that the situation remained like that. Bangladesh is surrounded, India is this giant neighbor which surrounds it from all three sides. It only opens up in Bay of Bengal. And their relations are extremely deep. The geographical proximity, of course, and then the historical, strategic interaction between the two countries is very, very strong. In fact, while we are talking here, Indian president is in Dhaka at the invitation of his Bangladeshi counterpart to, join celebrations of their Victory Day. And earlier, Prime Minister Modi has also visited Dhaka last March to be a part of this independence celebrations. But I must say that his visit was really not welcomed by many Bangladeshis, and there was an outpouring, and they all poured out on the streets of Dhaka and other major cities of Bangladesh, demanding Sheikh Hasina to withdraw the invitation. So this is what the relation was, but of course, we cannot expect India being a much larger neighbor for Bangladesh to turn away from it. As far as our own relations, do I have time? Or should I? Can I go on, or I can just? 10 minutes so much. Okay, thank you. So as far as our relations with Bangladesh is concerned, I must say that they have been in deep freeze for a long time, but I see a movement a little bit because Prime Minister Hasina and Prime Minister Imran Khan have spoken to each other on telephone. They have also accepted to their invitations to each of the countries, and but there's too much of talk. I think now we need to walk as well. Foreign Secretary level consultations are new. They have agreed, the two countries have agreed to have Foreign Secretary level consultations, which have not been held for over, after hiatus of more than a decade or so, and JEC to be convened soon, but the dates have not yet been finalized. Prime Minister Imran Khan, in his rather long epistle, had, conveyed to Prime Minister Hasina that Pakistan would like to have develop relations, brotherly friendly ties with Bangladesh, and want to expand in every field of cooperation. And his message, particularly on the birth centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was well received in Dhaka and was acknowledged by Prime Minister Hasina. I'm not going to speak on economic because I had written a few pages about economic, but I'm not, since Dr. Ronak Jahai already covered it, so I'm just going to leave it. In conclusion, I hope that our two countries and our future generations, especially the youth, get to know the real history and learn from this, from the bad experience that we had. I mean, at times I feel it was fait accompli, that it had to happen, but I wish it would have happened in a much more civilized way rather than going through that military action. So I'd like to end here. That was something. Thank you very much.
Now we are going to start the question answer session, and we have two members. I have a question for Dr. Dr. Ronak Jahan. What are the irritants hindering the bolstering of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations? Moreover, how it can be overcome?
Thank you. As I have been trying to say several times, that our relations should be perceived with a long-term view of, first, what is the interest of, what will serve the interest of the people of Pakistan and people of Bangladesh. And one should not be looking for short-term opportunities of changing one regime or changing another regime. And also one should not look at this relationship from a negative perspective of what maybe what is the relations or perceptions of India. I think if you take a long-term interest perspective of developing relationship between the people of Pakistan and people of Bangladesh, despite regime changes, then as I mentioned earlier, developing economic relations is the way forward, because I think young people in both countries, they want to move ahead and survive and prosper in a globalized world. And then I think the irritants or the opportunities one should look at is, what really are the opportunities? Are there any opportunities for building better economic relationships between the two countries? And I think if we just harp on and on talking about either past history or what is the role of India or not India, I think that is a very negative way of looking at things. We should look at it more positively, saying, is there something to be gained by better relationship between the people of Pakistan and people of Bangladesh, and what are those areas? We should look forward at the aspirations of young people. Thank you.
I'd like Ambassador Rafiuzzahman to add his, yeah, please.
Actually, this question is that, that my question to Ambassador Rafiuzzahman, what are the irritants hindering the bolstering of Pakistan-Bangladesh relations? Moreover, how it can be removed. I think the main irritant that does not help in bringing our two countries relates to apology. And there are many friends, and I knew many people in Bangladesh who would tell me that as long as apology remains an irritant, we don't expect any improvement in our relation. And to extent, I kind of agree with them. There is a lobby in Pakistan as well, which kind of supports, I mean, maybe a small one, but it supports that we should go ahead and apologize. But there are also some people in Bangladesh who have been telling me that Pakistan should bring it on the table and let's discuss it over. But if we keep on shoving it on the table, things will not help. And I think I tend to agree with that argument that we need to speak about it. It may take, time, long time, but it is important. And I think it is in foreign affairs relations, it is sine qua non that you discuss things, that you don't put them behind, because just by putting them behind, they don't go away. So that is the basic irritant. And then, of course, as the foreign minister had, former foreign minister had said that basically Awami League, which is now in the government for the last 10 years, it's they are the ones who always ask for it, demand for it, although not in every meeting, but that questions remains kind of on the horizon. So my view in the matter is that we need to talk every issue and every matter with Bangladesh. And when you talk, you open the doors. And this is one way I think we might help in, removing the main irritant. And otherwise also, like I said, that in diplomacy, you just do not close doors. Like I've been telling, when I'm meeting with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, I said that it is so difficult for Pakistani to go to Bangladesh because their visas are, there is a kind of a ban on Pakistan. I mean, you can get a visa for London and America and Paris, but it's difficult to get visa from Bangladesh. So we need to, and that is the reason our young generation remain in dark. They don't get to meet. So there should be a exchange of delegations, like parliamentary delegations, youth delegations. Journalists should move. There was a time, in fact, when I was there in Dhaka, we still sent journalists from Bangladesh to visit Dhaka. In fact, during my tenure, 2 delegations came here and they went back very happy. They had, of course, they spoke to their meetings with the foreign secretary. In fact, was very, very helpful. And our foreign secretary kind of briefed them on the whole gambit of relations between our 2 countries. And they were very, very appreciative and acknowledged Pakistan's role in this regard. So I think this is how we can try and resolve the issues. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Hassan Habib and I'm a former ambassador. Thank you, Rafi, for your experience that you shared with us. But I recall you went once to lay wreath on Sheikh Mujib's grave. And secondly, when you were organizing your functions, what was the response of the official response? I mean, from the Foreign Office or different departments to attend to you? And my final observation, how many times you were called to Bangladeshi Foreign Office and given a dose of diplomacy? Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. Hassan is a very, old colleague of mine, and we have worked together in the ministry. I'll answer your last question first. My predecessors have been called almost twice or thrice a week, the Foreign Office, but I was this bad. During my entire stay, I was called only twice. On one occasion, it was that, we had a Facebook page of our High Commission, and something, very unpleasant came up on that, on the Facebook. And in the morning, while I'm sitting in my office at about 8:39 in the morning, I received a phone call from the Director General and asked me to come over. And I said, what happened? So he told me the reason, that please go and visit your Facebook site. So I immediately did that, and I knew that this is going to create problems. So I was summoned to the Foreign Office, and while on my way to the ministry, although the traffic in Dhaka is really crazy, so it's not that far from our mission, about 8 kilometers or so, but it took me at least an hour and a half to reach there. And while I was on my way, it was being shown on television that the High Commissioner has reached here, High Commissioner has reached here. And when I entered into the ministry, there was a battery of about 300 to 400 journalists with all the TV cameras and everything. And they all bounced at me as soon as I got out of the car and asked me that, how are you going to respond to this summons? So I said, I have not even met the Foreign Secretary. Let me go and see. So anyway, the additional Foreign Secretary, who was kind of, he was the one who called me, and he expressed his extreme anger, in fact, really anger, that how can, Pakistan, your mission put up such a thing? So I tried and, my best to convince him and said that, this would be the last thing any high commissioner would do. And in this cyber world, it is extremely difficult for us to control. Things keep on popping up. So it was beyond my control. So I said, no, but this is not fair. So, I mean, it was a really, that kind of thing had happened with me for the first time in entire foreign service career. But I must say that this was many Bangladeshis. And there was a reception in the evening at German embassy, and I met the foreign secretary there as well. So he said, Rafi, I'm so sorry for, this afternoon. So I said, everybody's asking me here, every diplomat is asking me here what happened. I said, everybody's asking me here as well. And I'm telling them that what has happened. So that kind of thing happened once with me. And as far as, these functions and attendance is concerned, I must say that no, government's participation won't be there. But God, I mean, it was Mr. Gohar Rizvi who would always come to my functions whenever I would invite him. And a large number of Bangladeshis. In fact, you're talking about the laying of wreath by me. It was actually, on 15th August, the Bangladeshi governments invite all heads of mission and they take them on helicopters to Tongipara, where Sheikh Mujib's remains are buried. But that day it rained like, cats and dogs. So they had to cancel the plan. And then suddenly it occurred to me that why not go and lay a wreath at the memorial here where the killing took place. So I called up the Foreign Office and I told the Chief of Protocol that I would like to go and lay the wreath. So he was pleasantly surprised. And he said, we will be sending you there will be protocol and we are sent. So anyway, so I went, but I informed the Foreign Office and I took them in the loop. I said, I'm going to go and lay the wreath because, Bangladesh is an independent sovereign country. And Sheikh Mujib's daughter is the Prime Minister. So it is going to send a good message. So I went and I laid the wreath. And the Chief of Protocol told me that you must come early because the President and the Prime Minister also will be coming in about 4. So you have to be there by 3. Anyway, I reached there and I laid the wreath. And as soon as many people were there, and especially some journalists, they started clicking pictures. And when they saw the Pakistan flag at my car, so they were rather pleased. And I, offered a Fatiha and I returned. And as soon as I got back to my residence, I started receiving, there was a flurry of telephone calls from so many people, including ministers of some of them called me and they said, you did something very, very good. And it has sent very positive vibes to, even Prime Minister got to know it. And next day in the newspaper, in the collage of pictures, there was, on the main page, there were 3 pictures. One was that of Prime Minister, the President, and myself. And also, on the same day, like the very next day, there was an article published on the front page. And, they cut me literally into pieces and said, how dare the Pakistan High Commissioner goes and lays wreath. It's hypocrisy and this, that, and the other. So many people, many Bangladeshi friends asked me that I should, issue a rejoinder. I said, no, I'm not. It's a point of view and I'm not going to, get into this. I mean, you should accept it as a point. Why should we cannot keep on fighting with everyone that why did you say this or that? So anyway, this was, as long as Bangladeshis appreciated it, my job was done. And you talked about your reception, like people were scared to come to our receptions. They would not come, because of the tensions between our 2 countries. But the first reception that I hosted on 23rd March, and we had invited about 300 people or so. And, but, the hall that we booked was packed like sardines. It was, it was overflowing. And then I was told normally, the ambassadors and the chief guest, whosoever he or she is, they make speeches and then the national, but I said, we are not going to do that because of we didn't want to embarrass a Bangladeshi host. So I said, I'm not going to make a speech, but we will just have a cake cutting and that's it. to my utter surprise and pleasant surprise, was that State Minister for Foreign Affairs turned up. And I got a message from the office that, from his office, that he will be making some remarks. So they expected me also to do so. So I made a 7 to 8 minutes extempore speech, and I said all the good things between between Pakistan and Bangladesh. And I said that, my grandfather was here, and we must emulate many lessons from Bangladesh, especially with regard to women empowerment. The Prime Minister was a lady, the leader of the opposition was a lady, and the Speaker of the National Assembly was a lady. So I said this shows that how women empowerment in Bangladesh has contributed significantly in its development. So, and there was, sorry, being sounding rather pompous, but I would say that when I stepped out, came out the days, the American ambassador and Saudi ambassador and the British High Commissioner, they surrounded me and they said, Rafi, you have created a history today in Bangladesh. I said, oh, thank you very much. He said, because there was a thunderous applause and people really, especially, Bangladeshis really appreciated it. So these were the few things. I think I'm going to stop here.
Thank you all so much. I have just two quick questions. I know, Dr. Ronak, you spoke about the transformation economically and some other factors, and you spoke about how the unity of the two countries can come around that. I know Ambassador spoke about the cultural connection. So I wanted to actually reach out and talk about the social transformations. And what I mean by that is that I know in the recently in the news, there's been this case about Abrar Fahad, a student who was killed by fellow students in the university. I'm pretty sure in Bangladesh, this is a very hot topic. And those 20 individuals who were involved in that were also given the death sentence. And I think that's a social transformation that's not, I don't know if it's not being talked about on other platforms outside of Bangladesh, but how do you feel that? Is that something that, the history, particularly with Mukti Bahani and some of the issues, again, not digging in the past in that sense, but kind of dealing with the past in a way that has these questions have to be answered. I mean, we know Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was assassinated as a result of some of those activities. And this student kind of activities may be connected in that sense to that spirit, but now there's a strong stance from the government to stand up against this, to end that extremism on a national front. So how important do you feel the social transformation is to bringing our two countries together on that? And with that, there's another question for the ambassador as well, because he mentioned these cultural ties in the histories of our country. And the current situation in Assam, which is something that Bangladesh and Pakistan as well takes notice of. Is this a space that we can actually explore and bring unity and a unified front and to address these concerns? I speak that in reference of the spirit of how the two countries gained independence, because the idea of a two-state solution, and I wanted Dr. Ronak to shed light on that, how Bangladeshis feel about that, particularly in light of what's happening right now in Assam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I have been telling before, I think that in terms of social transformation, because of this rapid progress we made in terms of both social indicators and economic indicators, that means that our society is undergoing a lot of changes. And given now the social media's role, I think there is a great deal of freedom in terms of the younger people to raise various issues and questions. And as an academic, of course, I believe very strongly in freedom of expression, and that every issue, there should not be just one single officially sanctioned narrative, but that people should be given the freedom to raise new questions, new issues, debate it. And I think what happened to Abrar, that shows really one very bad aspect of our politics, that he could be so cruelly killed. But and this is happening, I mean, this has happened in Bangladesh, but this is also happening in other countries in South Asia, where you take great deal of risk if you want to freely express yourself. What is, I think, the only silver lining here is that once the media and other civil society groups raised a lot of alarm about this, that the state machineries then also took a very firm stand. And then this 20 people, then they got life sentence. So that getting this sentence, I think, was a step in the right direction. But I mean, in terms of future, I think the communication through social media or even through webinars, there is nothing to really prevent the progressives amongst us to talk to each other around certain, not so much always repeating the problems, because we know the problems and the past, but how we can resolve it. But most important, I find that there is really complete, I mean, very few of us know anything about the lives of others in South Asia. We really, Bangladeshi young people don't really know that much about India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Nepal or Maldives. It is not in our textbooks. Every country is changing. Similarly, the same is the story in India. They don't know much about us. They may know about 71, but what happened in the last 50 years? Same for Pakistan. People know 71, but every country has changed tremendously. And I think there is really nothing to prevent younger generation through social media and through other technologies to open up these kinds of discussions, to understand each other a little bit, learn from each other if they think they have something to learn from, show some interest. You have to remember that it is not that people are not communicating. Some of the extremist groups, I think they are communicating with each other in every country. But I think what is lagging is that some networking and communications by the people who may want to see a more progressive future for us. So that, I think, is my answer to this, how all this social transformation that is taking place, but particularly focusing on the youth. I think amongst the youth, I always like to talk about the youth because they are the future. And there are certain groups, certain common problems amongst youth in every country. Very disengaged, the drugs and this and that, all kinds of violence is a common problem. But also there are other youths who are working to resolve some of these problems of either climate change or violence or women's empowerment. And I think we can also, we don't need to, these days, yes, if the states, there is a problem between state to state, but through these webinars and through other social media, people can talk if they are interested to really know. But I find that there really is a lack of real interest to learn about the conditions of fellow people in our parts of the region in South Asia. And that is why I think, South Asians, as a region is falling so much behind. In terms of what is happening, of course, in Assam, that is a great concern for us because it is in our neighborhood. And Bangladesh, as you know, is a very small, territorially small, and our population is a great deal. But Bangladesh, from the beginning, what I'm saying, that we want to maintain our secular identity. We also have a lot of diversity in our own country in terms of religion and ethnicity. We want to maintain peace in our country. So I think in terms of how we react, is that we want to see overall that nothing gets inflamed and how we can calm the situation. That is, I think, how we view this. But certainly in terms of, we regard this not, it is when there is a violation of human rights, no matter in which country, I think as academics or if there are young activists, then they need to pick it up, but on the basis of human rights violations, and not look at it from the prism of one single country's interest to either. So I think that is that we need to maintain certain standards, universal rights standards, through which we will judge others as well as ourselves. If there is any human rights violation in my own country, then I would speak up and stand for it. And then only I have then a moral authority to protest against the human rights violations in other countries. Thank you.
I have another question, which is about International Crimes Tribunal. The question is to all panel members: an active International Crimes Tribunal, is it compatible with improvement of Pakistan-Bangladesh bilateral ties? Because new judgments are expected from International Crimes Tribunal.
I think let me just round it up that I don't think so. In my opinion, it's just going to be compatible with the decisions of ICJ, because in my view, this matter is not going to be brought up in ICJ, because if it has to be, the Bangladeshis would have taken the lead in that, and they have not done that.
Yes, there is one. Don't be active.
Actually, I'm Professor Maksud Jan from SSUT, and we all know that Pakistan economy is struggling, because in the last 50 years of Soviet invasion in our neighboring country, then American invasion in Afghanistan. Now, since the war is over, so we should expect that there will be faster progress of our economy. That is one expectation. Now, about the apology, in fact, Mukti Bahini should apologize, because they hedged the Agartala conspiracy and they got the help from the enemy, and they got the help from the enemy. That was the main reason between the division of East and West Pakistan. They should apologize. They were the traitors. That is my comment.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I was in the class in the morning, and I asked my class that why today is a important day in Pakistan's history. And all 32 of my students said APS occurred on this day. They were talking about the Peshawar massacre by Tehreek Taliban Pakistan. And I said, don't you want to go a bit back? And believe me, there was our youth, these are 20-year-olds, they have very little connection with Bangladesh. I would say that it's very important that if we want to have connection with the future connection with Bangladesh, 2-3 things have to happen. First of all, I would say that in Pakistani value system, we are a very poor country as far as values are concerned. But one value, unless we can manage diversity, and diversity in all spheres, diversity of opinion, diversity in religious thought, diversity in politics, diversity in economic economy, diversity in sects, etc., etc. Unless we can manage diversity, we ourselves will face dire consequences. I'll tell you, the diversity has got, when you manage diversity, it's got certain scale. In the center is tolerate. And if you go on the negative side, we see it in Pakistan, then you first go to punishment. Tolerate, then punish, because people are diverse. You have power, so you punish people. Then you go to another extreme and you say destroy to annihilate. Okay, and that also we see in Pakistan. On the positive side, I like to talk about positive side. Diversity, you have to not only accept, but you have to value and celebrate, because nature is diverse. And if you go root cause of Pakistan-Bangladesh problem, I tell you, it was our mismanagement of diversity. That was the root cause. The root cause was not Mukti Bahini later or Agartala, etc., etc. We were, from the very first day, we did not manage diversity.
I'm on a Zoom meeting.
And on that, I would like to conclude my remarks and request Dr. Masuma Hassan to make farewell remarks. Unfortunately, Ambassador Riaz Khokar wanted to speak, but his Zoom connection was not working.
I'll speak from here, so I can keep looking at you. I really don't know how to conclude. You know, we thought when we were planning this conference, we thought of the 16th of December as a milestone. It was a milestone. Our country broke up. But it was, as Ronak has said, a moment of liberation for Bangladesh. And today's presentations have been so enlightening and so expressive. And I want to thank all the speakers individually. Ambassador Riaz Khokar for his excellent keynote speech, in which he gave such a good analysis of our relationship, its origins, and its future. I want to thank Sikandar Mehdi for his personal memories, and Shahid Zuzwan from Dhaka, who has convinced me that the Bengalis are a martial race, and for his various descriptions of identity. I also want to thank Ronak for her excellent presentation, and for the fact that she has, in her presentation, which was missing in one or two others, accepted that there was much to say for and against violence on both sides of the spectrum. And for Ambassador Rafiuzaman, who helped me, in fact, to conceptualize this conference, because he came to see me. Many thoughts have been expressed, and we don't have to agree with one another. Many of us don't agree with some of the narrative that was stated. We have a different way of looking at how or why our country broke up. One was just stated here recently. Somebody said the Mukti Bahini should apologize. It's all right. We can accept these different points of view. But the purpose of this conference was to look to the future. And one thing that has come out in almost every statement and speech today is the importance of roping or bringing the youth into the loop. Almost every speaker has talked about it because the future belongs to the youth. And Asif Humayun, thank you for standing in for Kaisal Bengali and for the statement you made about diversity, because I think it is very, very relevant. It is very relevant. I remember once I heard the famous scholar Anne-Marie Schumel, and she said that only the tolerant can be brave. Only the tolerant can be brave, and only the brave can be tolerant. That has stuck in my mind all these years. So I thank everybody individually, all the keynote speaker, all the speakers, everybody who raised questions. Some of them were questions we agreed with, some of them were questions we didn't agree with. But this has always been the practice of this institute, that we have given space for the expression of different kinds of opinion. We've been doing this now almost for 75 years. This is the oldest think tank in Pakistan. Next year, we are going to celebrate our 75th anniversary, and I hope all of you will come to it. Celebration. I want to express my sincere thanks to my team, the Honorary Secretary, Dr. Tanveer Khalid, my researchers, Hamna, Salman, Bajiha, and Moonface, Marukh. I want to thank all of them because they work night and day, as well as the administrative team, all the people who typed endless reams of paper, Amir and Fakhruddin and Khalid and Kashan and the library staff. It was a team effort, and if there is any success that we have achieved, it is because of them. Thanks everybody for attending, and have a safe day today. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you, Dr. Masuma. I would request all members of the audience to kindly join us downstairs for tea.